Please distribute books. San Francisco, July 5th, 1970. Srila Prabhupada was attending the 1970 Rath Yatra in San Francisco. The day was cold and windy. About 10,000 people had joined in San Francisco. Had joined in Lord Jagannath's procession through Golden Gate Park. Srila Prabhupada had danced in the street with thousands of participants during the parade, addressed a large gathering in an auditorium by the beach, and looked on as his disciples Srila Prabhupada was attending the 1970 Rath Yatra in San Francisco. The day was cold and windy, and about 10,000 people had joined in Lord Jagannath's procession through Golden Gate Park. Srila Prabhupada had danced in the street with thousands of participants during the parade, addressing a large crowd in an auditorium by the beach, and looked on as his disciples had distributed a free vegetarian prasadam feast to thousands. But when the devotee arrived with half a dozen advanced copies of Volume 1 of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Srila Prabhupada appeared extremely pleased. Surrounded by devotees and curious festival goers, Srila Prabhupada held one of the books, admiring the front cover with its full cover picture of Radha and Krishna. The volume was big and almost 7.5 by 10.5 inches, and its dust jacket shone silver with bright red letters Krishna. It was a transcendental wonder in Srila Prabhupada's reverent hands. Onlookers could barely restrain themselves from pressing against Srila Prabhupada to peer over his shoulders. They didn't restrain their exclamations when Prabhupada smiled and opened the volume. He examined the illustrations, the print, the paper, and the binding. Very nice, he said. He fixed his attention on a page reading. Then he looked up and announced that this greatly valuable book, Krishna, had just arrived and that everyone should read it. Holding one book in his hand with the other copies stacked before him, he said that anyone who so desired should come forward and buy a copy. People began clamoring, and hands with $10 bills thrust forward while voices cried out begging for a copy. And Prabhupada promptly sold every book, not even keeping one for himself. For the devotees, Srila Prabhupada's selling of the Krishna book was the most spectacular event of the Rath Yatra festival. They poured over the purchased books in groups, discussing Krishna's pastimes and the effect they would have on the people of America. Brahmananda told how in 1967, Prabhupada had given away his advanced copy of Teachings of Lord Chaitanya in his room at 26 2nd Avenue in New York City. Just before the book had arrived, Srila Prabhupada had been sitting and talking about Satyavrata, a disciple who had previously stopped coming to the temple due to petty quarreling with his godbrothers. When the copy of the teachings of Lord Chaitanya had arrived, Srila Prabhupada had lovingly inspected it and had then offered it to Satyavrata as a gift. Brahmananda had been astounded to see Srila Prabhupada giving away his only copy of the book. Having helped publish the book, Brahmananda knew how painstakingly Prabhupada had written it and how he had anxiously awaited 1 year for the book to finally see print. Yet once it arrived, he had immediately given it away to a disciple who was not even in good standing. Satyavrata had taken the book, thanked Srila Prabhupada, and left, never to be seen again. Although Srila Prabhupada wanted his disciples to be as eager to distribute Krishna conscious literature as he was, none of them knew how to do it. Distributing a magazine and asking for a small donation was one thing, but a big hardbound book. When the entire shipment of teachings of Lord Chaitanya had arrived in New York in April of 1967, the devotees had hired a truck, picked up the books at the dock, and unloaded them at 26 2nd Avenue. They had then shipped them to ISKCON centers in Los Angeles, San Francisco, Boston, Montreal, and elsewhere. And there they remained. Some devotees had tried placing ads in magazines and leaving books in bookstores on consignment, but the books didn't sell. How to sell these big, hardbound books remained a mystery until something significant happened, an accidental discovery. One day in 1971, while driving back to the temple after chanting in downtown San Francisco, two brahmacharis stopped at a local store station for gas. When the attendant came to the window for money, one of the books showed him a Krishna book. The attendant seemed interested, and the two devotees began preaching the glories of Krishna consciousness. When they suggested he take the book as a payment for gas, he agreed. Astonished at what had happened and inspired at their success, the two brahmacharis went the next day with several Krishna books and stood in front of a grocery store. And again it happened. This time they sold two books. Keshava, the San Francisco temple president, phoned his GBC supervisor and brother, Karandar, in Los Angeles, to tell him what had happened. It's like a miracle, Keshava exclaimed. Karandar encouraged him to experiment further, and soon the San Francisco temple had half a dozen men going from door to door showing the books to people in their homes. When Buddhimanta began selling as many as 5 books in a day, the devotees and other temples, especially Los Angeles, San Diego, and Denver, wanted to follow his example. And whoever tried it and sold a book became caught in a euphoric excitement. The experience and testimonies of devotees selling Srila Prabhupada's books describe a special taste distinct from the happiness young men might ordinarily experience by stumbling upon a sales technique and finding themselves on the verge of making a lot of money. The difference is that devotees' book distribution, being devotional service to Krishna, produces an ecstasy that is transcendental, an ecstasy far beyond even the greatest material happiness. Ordinary conscious literature are as material life from spiritual life. And anyone observing spiritual life from the material point of view will not understand it. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati had compared such empirical attempts to understand the ecstasy of Krishna consciousness with the attempts to taste honey by licking the outside of the bottle. The young men and women began to distribute books in America, knew that Srila Prabhupada, by giving them Krishna consciousness, had saved them from hellish life, and they wanted to help him give Krishna consciousness to others. And such preaching by distributing his books was ecstasy, spiritual ecstasy. By mid 1971, the temple was selling hundreds of Krishna books a week. Karandar, Prabhupada's book fund manager, began sending Sankirtan newsletters to the North American temples and to Srila Prabhupada by listing the monthly results of each temple's book distribution. The newsletters incited competition. Karandar's December 1971 newsletter summed up the mood of the year and urged the devotees to increase. Recently, in an all-out program to sell books, the San Francisco Temple had been averaging 20 Krishna books per day distribution. What was the technique? Keshava says, simply, we make it our priority activity. All you have to do is to want to do it, and then try as hard as you can. Everywhere we go, we carry BTGs and Krishna books. He says on street, SKP, door to door, to the laundromat, to the store, everywhere. We have been taxing our brains in so many fancy and complicated ways to try to increase sales. But as it has been experienced, nothing is more successful than simply taking the books personally in hand and going door to door with this causeless mercy. Just consider how many hours a day do you spend specifically trying to distribute Srila Prabhupada's literature, which is the dearmost thing to him. The crowning touch to the year-end Sankirtan, however, came not from the newsletter but from Prabhupada himself, who wrote to Keshava, the king of Krishna book distribution. I've been receiving so many reports about how my disciples from San Francisco Temple cannot be surpassed by anyone in distributing my books. Sometimes they're selling as many as 70 Krishna books daily. So if this is true, then certainly when I return to US, I must come and stay in your temple. By distributing my books profusely, you're giving me great encouragement to translate, and you're all helping me to fulfill the order which Guru Maharaj gave me. So I'm so much grateful to you, and I'm sure Krishna will bless you a million times over for doing this work. I hope you and all my beloved disciples in San Francisco Temple are in strong health and jolly mood. Copies of this letter went out to every ISKCON center. Prabhupada had always given his blessings to all devotees, but never before could anyone recall his saying a devotee would get Krishna's blessings a million times over. Although a letter from Prabhupada usually instructed a specific devotee, the instructions often had universal application. And Srila Prabhupada's letters made clear his disciples' top priority, book distribution. I'm very pleased to hear that you're increasing in your distribution of our books and magazines. This is a good sign that your preaching work is also strong. The more you want to increase your strength in preaching, the more you go on selling books. I want especially that my books be distributed widely. Robert's ambition was to replace mundane literature with transcendental. At least in every home, there should be one piece of Krishna conscious literature. He reasoned, because if a person read only one page, his life could be turned toward perfection. If 1% of the readers became devotees, he wrote, that will change the world. Whereas mail order advertisers is satisfied with the 5% response, Srila Prabhupada spoke of an even smaller percentage, 1%, whom he thought could become pure devotees in response to receiving a book. Lord Krishna also confirms this in Bhagavad Gita. Out of many thousands among men, one may endeavor for perfection, and of those who achieve perfection, hardly one knows me in truth. To make the world Krishna conscious, therefore, would require that millions of pieces of transcendental literature be distributed. Srila Prabhupada wanted his disciples to understand why he should distribute his books, and he instructed them through his letters. Who God is can be summed up only in 5 words. Krishna is the supreme controller. If you become convinced of this and preach it enthusiastically, success is assured, and you will be doing the greatest service for all living entities. He wrote to Jayadvaita, these books and magazines are most important propaganda weapons to defeat the ignorance of Maya's army. The more we produce such literature and sell them profusely all over the world, the more we shall deliver the world from the suicide course. To Jagadish, he wrote, I'm encouraged to see your reports of books sold because it proves that you consider it your responsibility to see that more and more people are reading our literature. Actually, this is the solid basis for our preaching work. No other movement has got such profuse authority for preaching. And if someone reads a Krishna conscious philosophy, he becomes convinced. Prabhupada continued to insist that all major Krishna conscious programs be maintained, including deity worship, chanting Hare Krishna in public, and holding outside lectures. All programs were important, but books distribution, whenever possible, should accompany the other programs. To a sannyasi whose main program is public lecturing, Prabhupada wrote, distribute books, as many as possible. If anyone hears some philosophy from us, that will help him. But if he purchases one book, that may turn his life. So selling books is the best preaching activity. Sell books, hold kirtan in public places like schools and colleges, preach. And in a letter to Bhagavan Das in France, he stressed the same thing. What will your 3-minute preaching do? But if they buy one book, it may turn their life. During this period of increasing book distribution, one of Prabhupada's newly initiated sannyasis concocted the idea that devotees should spend more time studying. While visiting the New York temple, the sannyasi openly advocated that devotees read Prabhupada's books 5 to 8 hours daily. The temples were following a new schedule. Srila Prabhupada had set up with devotees attending the morning program, going out all day for street chanting and book distribution, and returning in the evening for a class on Bhagavad Gita. But now controversy arose, and an urgent phone call was placed to Srila Prabhupada in Los Angeles. When Prabhupada heard details from his secretary, he immediately responded. My reply is that this Sankirtan or street chanting must go on. This is our most important program. Lord Chaitanya's movement means the Sankirtan movement. You may simply take 2 hours for chanting 16 rounds daily, 2 hours for reading congregationally, and balance of time go out for Sankirtan. We must do both, reading books and distributing books. But distributing books is the main propaganda. Reading in class for 2 hours is sufficient, and the other reading can be done in spare time if one has got it. It is not that one has to be always reading. 1 hour a morning for Bhagavatam class and 1 hour evening, either Bhagavad Gita or Nectar of Devotion. That is sufficient. January 1972. You should always think of new outlets for distributing my books, Srila Prabhupada wrote to Jagdish. And the new outlets the devotees found, shopping centers, malls, parking lots. They were meeting more people than ever before. By entering the malls and shopping centers, the devotees plunged into the heart of American society, meeting pious and impious, rich and poor, black and white. Bookselling was still difficult, but the devotees persevered, carrying their heavy book bags and distributing the literature they knew could solve all problems. The devotees saw the shoppers as so many walking victims of material energy, people living for sensual and mental pleasure and therefore doomed to an inauspicious death. Any serious devotee could philosophically explain from Bhagavad Gita the predicament of the materialist. But now, they were directly witnessing this plight. And by Prabhupada's mercy, they were working hard to deliver the missing essence of transcendental knowledge to the bewildered souls. And then came the discovery of traveling from town to town to sell books. Some of the brahmacharis in Los Angeles had been feeling that by staying in the temple, they were wasting time they could be using for book distribution. So they loaded a van with Krishna books and went to areas where they could camp for a week, live a simpler life, and distribute books as many hours a day as they liked. This traveling Sankirtan produced another significant increase by creating an environment wherein the men could become fully absorbed in their work. The new program spread quickly throughout ISKCON world, and Srila Prabhupada liked it. I'm very glad to hear from you the wonderful news of traveling party in England. I think people of the place are becoming more and more inclined for this Krishna consciousness movement. They're inviting you to stay at their houses. They're taking books, becoming sometimes devotees. All of these are very encouraging signs to me. Simply go on in this way, stopping in every village and city in England, Scotland, and if there are other places like Ireland. Simply stop for some time, distribute books, and hold Sankirtan procession. Answer their questions, give some leaflets or small informations. Really distribute prasadam whenever possible, at least some small thing. And if there is some genuine interest being shown, then request the townspeople to arrange some engagements for speaking in their schools or in someone's home or in a hall like that. In this way, always remain without anxiety for destination and comfortable situations, always relying on the mercy of Krishna for your plan. Just go on preaching his message and selling his books whenever there is interest. We shall not waste time if there is no interest or if people are unfriendly. There are so many places to go. Srila Prabhupada began saying that opening new centers was less important now that the traveling parties were were combing the country. When we heard that the temple president of Vancouver had acquired a bus for traveling, he wrote, I think we are becoming like a gigantic guerrilla warfare movement fighting with Maya. This traveling in buses is the best means to drive away Maya and establish Krishna consciousness all over the world. Prabhupada was glad to hear that temple president and zonal leaders were also going out with this traveling Sankirtan parties. The Vedic conception of the commander, he said, is that he must fight in the front lines, not sit behind the scenes sheltered. Having already witnessed how some of his leading disciples had become bogged down by managing many things, he advised them all to travel and preach, distributing literature wherever they went. Practically, this ISKCON organization is there because I've been always traveling. I never sat down in my old age. No. So you follow my example and preach widely all over the world. This is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's version. When a devotee in California wrote Srila Prabhupada for permission to give up married life and go on traveling Sankirtan, Prabhupada replied that to give up family life was not necessary. Lord Chaitanya had taught that being a sannyasi or a grihastha did not matter, as long as one fully served Krishna. A householder could sometimes travel and distribute books with or without his wife. Near the end of 1972, the BBT newsletter, now compiled by Karanda's assistant Rameshwar, reported the ever increasing results of book distribution. Book distribution continues soaring to all new heights as more than 25 traveling Sankirtan parties roam the countryside, affecting the lives of hundreds of thousands of conditioned souls. Since mid September, we have distributed over 15,000 complete Krishna trilogy sets. And since mid August, we have distributed 9,000 soft Bhagavad Gitas and over 900 hard Bhagavad Gitas. Macmillan has has completely sold out. 20,000 Bhagavad Gitas sold commercially and has reprinted large quantities for the Christmas rush. Another breakthrough for book distribution came at the end of 1972. The previous year, devotees had taken advantage of the Christmas season by selling the Krishna book door to door, but no one had been aware just how significant the Christmas season could be. Rameshwar, in December 22nd, 1972, that we accidentally discovered the Christmas marathon in Los Angeles. Of course, we noticed a great increase in the number of people going into the stores, and the stores were staying open sometimes until midnight. I was standing in front of the Burbank Zodis. We were having an intense competition with prices in Los Angeles, and it was building up a feverish pitch. So, after distributing madly all day long, I had collected about $350 and had distributed 650 magazines. It was about 10 o'clock at night. I was convinced that this new world record is gone and that nobody was possibly going to beat me this day. Even though the store was open until 12, business had started slowing up. And I was thinking maybe I should go back. Undoubtedly, everyone is back already. No one has ever stayed up past 8 o'clock. They were all waiting up for me. I shouldn't keep them waiting. So, in this way, my mind was convincing me to go back. By 11 o'clock, the store was completely dead. I got in the car and started driving back. On the way back, I passed another Zodi's called Hollywood Zodi's on Sunset and Western. I was torn whether to stop or not because the store was crowded and was going to be open until midnight. But I decided, no, I'll go back because the other devotees will be waiting to see how many books I distributed. So I just kept driving. I finally arrived at the temple about 10 minutes to 12 and I burst into Sankirtan room. But the only person there was the secretary, Madhukantam. I said, oh no, everyone went to bed, he said. No, nobody is back yet. I was the first one back. That was the discovery of the first Christmas marathon. I was completely unplanned. No one had ever instructed anyone to stay out that late. We just did it spontaneously. Finally, at about 1:30 in the morning, all the devotees had returned, and we were all sitting around looking at the Sankirtan map. We couldn't sleep. We were so excited to go out. We were thinking, where can we find plenty of conditioned souls to distribute books to? Our noise and raucous laughter was like a drunken party, and it woke up Karanda, who was sleeping in his office in the next room. He came stumbling in, wiping the sleep off from his eyes. But when he saw us and saw what was going on, he burst out laughing and sent us all to bed, saying, get ready for tomorrow. So, in this way, we performed the 3 day marathon, December 22nd, 23rd, 24th. No one had distributed as many books before in the history of our movement. A big day had been considered to be somewhere between 25 and 40 books, but we were distributing 5,000 and 6,000 pieces of literature a day for a 3 day period. One temple had distributed almost 18,000 pieces of literature in just 3 days. At this time, Prabhupada was in Bombay. where his attempt to secure the land in Juhu had become entangling. The landlord was now refusing to sell the property and was trying to evict the devotees, even though Prabhupada had already installed Radhakrishna deities on the land. Although these matters were causing Srila Prabhupada anxiety, he continued his daily duties, taking his morning walk, lecturing in the evenings from the nectar of devotion, corresponding with and receiving news from his centers around the world, even organizing a Bombay Mandal Festival for January. When Prabhupada received news of the book distribution in Los Angeles and elsewhere in the United States, he was very pleased and amazed. Although involved with many affairs throughout the world, he put them aside and relished the overwhelming victory of book distribution in America. Immediately, he called in his personal secretary and dictated letters. My dear Rameshwar, I beg to acknowledge receipt of your letter dated December 27, 1972. With great happiness, I have read your figures of amount of books sold during the 3-day period, 22nd to 24, 1972. It was scarcely believable that more than 17,000 books could have been sold by one temple in 3 days. This indicates to me that people are at last becoming a little serious about this Krishna consciousness movement in your country. Otherwise, why should they buy our books? But they can see our boys and girls, devotees, are so much sincere and serious to distribute the message of Krishna consciousness. They are at once struck by seeing them, and therefore they appreciate and purchase. This is unique in the world. So I'm so much pleased upon all the boys and girls in Los Angeles and all over the world who are understanding and appreciating this unique quantity of our transcendental literature, and voluntarily they are going out to distribute despite all circumstances of difficulty. By this effort alone, they are sure to go back home, back to Godhead. The same day, Prabhupada dictated a letter to Karandar. I could never have thought it was possible to distribute so many literatures. Therefore, I can understand it is simply Krishna's blessings, blessing us for our sincerely working on his behalf. Actually, this is the secret of my success. Not that personally I have done anything wonderful, but because those who are helping me are sincere. They have done the work. This is the reason for our success all over the world, where others have failed. A little sincerity is a very difficult thing in this age of hypocrisy and bluff. But I'm so fortunate that Krishna has sent me all of you nice boys and girls who are sincerely working. Please convey to all of them my deepest appreciation. Srila Prabhupada's letter acknowledging the Christmas marathon and assuring the devotees they would go back home, back to Godhead, sent the book distribution movement flying into the new year with great momentum. Devotees continue to find many new ways and places to distribute books. New records were constantly topping the old, and the devotees were making still higher projections for the future. Rameshwar published in February 1973 newsletter a letter from a college student who had read one of Prabhupada's books. ISKCON's mail order office was receiving hundreds of letters a month. Sir, a couple of weeks ago, devotees of Krishna from Denver, I understand, were here at the University of Arkansas distributing literature. One young man approached me with a hard pitch for my purchasing a copy of Prabhupada's translation of Bhagavad Gita. I was initially quite skeptical. So many people are getting rich from selling their versions of the answer, and told him not to bother me. He instead insisted, though, and I finally gave in. I've been reading the Gita, not having finished it yet, and have found it quite rewarding. My mind, shaped in logic and empiricism, seems to find it barely tasting the transcendental material in the book. I discuss it with others. I find myself remembering certain passages. It is genuinely stimulating my interest, to say the least, in a way, the quiet, extensive readings in Christianity, Jain Buddhism, the lower forms of yoga, etc., have never succeeded in doing. In short, I think I've found the beginning. Rameshwar went on to beat the drum of Sankirtan. Actually, no one can properly measure the effect of a book distribution. If it was known how many books we distribute each month, we would be listed on the very bestseller list in the country. For example, as many of you know already, a new Gita has outsold any other edition of the Gita ever printed. The Macmillan Company has already sold tens of thousands of copies, while we have sold over 27,000 copies ourselves since they first appeared last August. With increased monies coming into book fund, Prabhupada had approved his trustees' plans to print larger quantities of books and store them in a warehouse, making them available to the temples for book distribution throughout the year. Yet keeping up with the temple's demands for books was still difficult, even with a warehouse. Small, easy to sell books like Beyond Birth and Death, On the Way to Krishna, Rajavidya, and The Perfection of Yoga were printed in tens of thousands. Distributors would go out carrying in their book bags a variety of books: Sri Ishopanishad, Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, and Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as well as an assortment of small books, back to Godhead magazines, and some inexpensive booklets like Krishna, the Reservoir of Pleasure, and Not Chanting Hare Krishna. Tom Beardry was living with his wife in Santa Cruz, Lord Chaitanya's appearance. He chanted all day, and after reading Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita, he felt he should become Srila Prabhupada's disciple. He began chanting and trying to interest his wife and friends in Krishna consciousness. While a traveling party of brahmacharis arrived to start a center in Santa Cruz, he told them he wanted to join. But they were skeptical. Then one day he showed up with a shaved head and dhoti, Kamburi. I began going out every day with the chanting party. Then gradually I began to break away from the Kirtan party to sell small books in shopping centers. One day I came back and one of the brahmacharis, Sarvabhauma, criticized me. He asked me how many big books I had sold. I said I didn't sell any. He said, how many did you bring with you? I said, I didn't have any to bring with me. Then you're in Maya, he said. You didn't bring any big books. How do you expect to sell them? Prabhupada wants these big books sold. So I thought to myself, gee, I must be in Maya. I said, how do you sell these books? He said, you pray to Prabhupada. Prabhupada gives you the mercy. So I thought, well, that makes sense. That's how everything works in Krishna consciousness. I went to my house. I thought about it and prayed to Prabhupada that I could sell these big books. I prayed all evening and then took rest. In the morning, I got up and it was on my mind. So I put one big book, Teachings of Lord Chaitanya, in my bag of small books. But in the course of selling the small books, I forgot the big book. Suddenly, a lady came up and said, what is the big book you have there? Then I remembered Prabhupada and my prayers, and I said, this is the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. I gave her the book and she gave me $3. When I went back to the temple, I told the devotees how Prabhupada had sold a book. Pragosh. I was coming regularly to the Detroit temple for classes in the evening, and I was doing some odd work to help devotees prepare the temple. Every night I would be painting and I would watch the devotees come back from Sankirtan. They seemed very ecstatic and enlivened, and I was a little curious about what they did there and that made them come back like this. I would be on my ladder painting and listening to them talk as they sat on the floor drinking hot milk. They would talk about how they had knocked on one man's door and he had happened, and then that happened. It was very attractive to me. After I moved into the temple, and had been a devotee about a week, someone asked me if I would like to go out and try distributing books. So I went out wearing the dhoti and tilak and using a straightforward presentation, walking up to people and giving them a card and a book, telling them about the contents of the book, showing them Prabhupada's picture and asking for a donation. This exhilaration I got from that was just incredible. It became extremely blissful to go out and do this. None of us could actually put a finger on why it was so ecstatic. We used to lie awake at night. All the brahmacharis stayed in one big room, and we would lie there on the floor in our sleeping bags, whispering to each other. What would you say to the people out there? There would be all these different conversations going on in the room at night with the lights out and everyone talking, trying to relate how they were presenting Prabhupada's books. Jagadhatri Devi Dasi. My first service was cleaning the temple. I was cleaning the whole temple. I would be looking out the window at my men piling into vans, getting ready for Sankirtan. And I would always think that I would really like to be doing that. Finally, our temple formed two Sankirtan parties, one of men and one of women. And we went out this summer to distribute books in the fairs of Washington State. The men and the ladies used to have competition to see who could distribute the most. Sura. I joined Krishna Consciousness in Seattle in 1973 and then sent me out on book distribution. My first day, we would always hear from Los Angeles about the letters Prabhupada was sending. Everything we heard was centered on Prabhupada's desire for his books to be distributed. It was by hearing that the newer devotees wanted to go out and be part of the Sankirtan party. We wanted to be soldiers for Prabhupada's books distribution army. We went to Spokane Fair, and the leader of the Spokane Temple wrote a letter to Srila Prabhupada requesting him to come and telling him the results of our book distribution. Then he received a reply from Prabhupada saying that he couldn't make it, but that the devotees should go to the fair and preach on his behalf. Fulfill my mission, Prabhupada said, that every man and woman in United States gets a book. That is what we were waiting for, to get an order directly from Srila Prabhupada. And this was what pleases him. Our book distribution kept increasing, and we just thought we never had so much fun before. It wasn't like austerity. Some of the devotees were thinking, well, it's really hard to go on Sankirtan. We were thinking, you must be nuts. It's the most fun thing you can do to go on Sankirtan and sell books. It was fun, not for sense gratification, but for the soul, because of our being willing in service to our spiritual master and Krishna. I appreciated it in that way. And when I first met Pragosh, I could see he was really dedicated, a true lover of Prabhupada because he was so dedicated to pleasing Prabhupada by distributing books. Pragosh, we were distributing in Santa Barbara, California. The area had been worked many times before, and the people were really puffed up. I went there with a couple of brahmacharis. One day, after trying to distribute for about 7 hours, I had sold only one book. I'd never before had anything like that happen to me in my whole time as a devotee. I was really working. I never stopped. At one particular point, I just couldn't take it anymore. I tried to give a book to someone and they just cracked off at me in a really obnoxious way. I had so much desire. I was trying so hard. And then when he did this, it just devastated me. I wanted to punch this guy in the nose. All my intensity came out and I erupted into tears. I just sat down on an old telephone pole that was lying by the street and started to cry. Then this devotee walked up and found me sitting there like I had just lost my best friend. He said, Prabhu, what's the matter? I said, I don't know what's the matter. I just cannot distribute books. Not one person will take a book. I've been out there for 7 hours. Do you know how many books I've distributed? One book. He then sat down and preached to me and put me back together. The next day, I was really trying to have a better day. I took my book back and just ran from one person to another all morning. Then I was showing the book to a girl, and she said she couldn't pay me with money, but she would gladly pay me. She was young and naive and didn't know what she was talking for about a minute. Then finally, when I realized, I called Hare Krishna and I took the book back from her, took off my bag, and just bolted to another parking lot. I ran from person to person all day, praying real hard to Krishna. By the end of the day, I had distributed a large number of books. Lavangalatika Devi Dasi. When I first came to Los Angeles, Srimati told me that Srila Prabhupada had said that being in the temple all the time was Maya. Prabhupada wanted us to go and distribute Bhagavad BTGs door to door. I learned from another devotee how to distribute books. There were so many experienced devotees who knew how. So I just followed in their footsteps. I would say what they did say and do what they did do. Then it became easy. When a person took a book and gave a donation, I could see it was Lord Chaitanya acting. I could see everything was working under the direction of Krishna's internal energy. Tom Deirdre had moved from Santa Cruz to Los Angeles, and by associating with devotees like Rameshwar and other book distributors, he soon became a leader. He was initiated in June 1972 and received the name Tripurari Das. Every day he would go to a supermarket parking lot near the temple and sell a couple hundred books of Easy Journey to Other Planets. One evening at the University of California at Long Beach, he had a few other book distributors drop in on a lecture given by a popular yoga leader, Rameshwar. I remember when they came back. I was in the middle of a Bhagavad Gita class, and I was giving the class in the temple room. All of a sudden, the door burst open, and they were standing there. Tripurari was in his street clothes, and the girls were in their saris. They just ran into the temple. You could see that something very special had taken place because their faces were glowing. They couldn't even speak. They were dazed or stunned. The whole temple was anxious to hear the news. So I quickly finished the class. Then Tripurari told us that he had just distributed 17 Bhagavad Gitas, the full, hardbound, unabridged Bhagavad Gitas in 2 hours. Lalita Sakhi had distributed 13, and Vrindavan had distributed 11. Shilak had distributed 11, and Makhan Lal had distributed 9. Nothing like this had ever been done before. We were all completely astonished that anyone could sell so many books like that. One morning, a few days later, Tripurari was driving down the San Diego freeway to go on traveling Sankirtan when he saw the sign for the Los Angeles airport and spontaneously decided to try it. After selling a dozen big books that day, he realized the airport was wonderful for book distribution. He started going out regularly to airport and soon distributing 30 to 40 books a day, sometimes giving individuals as many as 6 volumes of Srimad Bhagavatam at once. April 11, 1973. Srila Prabhupada flew from New York to Los Angeles, and a crowd of loving devotees greeted him. Tripurari. Prabhupada was arriving at 2 in the afternoon, and all the devotees were going to meet him. But it was also Easter weekend and a big day for book distribution at the airport. At that time, I was the only one working the airport. I was doing rather well and had sold about 30 books by 1:30. Then I changed into my dhoti and walked to the arrivals area to meet His Divine Grace. When he entered the terminal building, he looked at me and smiled, and I melted in ecstasy. We had kirtan all the way down the stairs, and when we got outside, all the devotees were going back to the temple. Then I thought, what business do I have to going back to the temple and chanting with all the devotees? My business is to stay and distribute the books. This is my service to Prabhupada. So I was the only one who didn't return to the temple. I stayed and distributed 67 books. When I got back, I found that Karankar had told Prabhupada about me and how I had been distributing books. When I heard that, I became very enthusiastic and continued to distribute books every day that week. In Los Angeles, Srila Prabhupada took his morning walks either at the shore of the Pacific Ocean or in the Shoat Hills Park. Every morning, a few disciples would join him, as well as Thaudam Singh, a PhD candidate in organic chemistry at the University of California. Srila Prabhupada would regularly discuss with Dr. Singh the scientific theory of lives originating from matter. Day after day, Prabhupada would expose Darwin's theory as foolish and unscientific. The sun would just be appearing on the horizon as Prabhupada and a small group of disciples walked. The air would be chilly, and Srila Prabhupada would wear his hooded saffron overcoat, while his disciples wearing sweaters or wool chadars followed him, listening and asking questions. Most of the conversation, however, would be between Prabhupada and Dr. Singh, who played the role of a materialistic scientist. Dr. Singh would present atheistic arguments, and Srila Prabhupada would defeat them with scriptural logic. I say to the scientists, Srila Prabhupada said, if life originates from chemicals and if your science is so advanced, then why can't you create life biochemically in your laboratories? On one of these morning walks, the older devotees introduced Rameshwar to Prabhupada. And at the devotees' request, Rameshwar began telling Srila Prabhupada about book distribution. He mentioned that sometimes the distributors would meet impersonalists and convince them to buy a Bhagavad Gita as it is. Srila Prabhupada stopped and turned gravely to Rameshwar. What do you say to them? He asked. Rameshwar told Prabhupada some of the techniques for selling a book. After a few moments, Prabhupada said, our men need to study our books also. On the morning, Tripurari accompanied Prabhupada on his walk. Prabhupada said little as he walked up and down the beach. Only when they were walking back towards the car did one of the devotees mention, Prabhupada Tripurari is here. Prabhupada turned and smiled. Ah, he is. How is the book distribution going? He asked. This was Tripurari's first time to speak directly with his spiritual master, and he wanted to say many things at once. In nervous enthusiasm, he began blurting out his realizations. Prabhupada interrupted. This is the best service for humanity, and he quoted from the Bhagavad Gita. There will never be a devotee more dear to me than he who preaches this message. With the exception of Rameshwar's and Tripurari's brief encounters with Prabhupada, none of the book distributors in Los Angeles had any personal exchanges or meetings with their spiritual master. But the closeness of their relationship with him was not dependent on physical proximity. Tripurari, my association with Srila Prabhupada was always more or less in separation and in the field. While many of my older devotees were trained personally by Prabhupada, I never got the training. I was trained by Srila Prabhupada more from within my own heart. I think that's the case with all of our book distributors. They have very little intimate sense of feeling for Prabhupada, but they never had much personal contact. Their intimacy and real sense of knowing Prabhupada very closely was because of that service which Prabhupada said was his life and soul. Seeing that the books went out. Srila Prabhupada liked to sit in his garden with his roses, jasmines, azaleas, honeysuckle, mint, silver lace vines, marigolds, and banana trees, and he liked the sound of the fountain. The small compound with its lawn, flowers, bushes, and seed for Srila Prabhupada was surrounded by high cider block walls. When Prabhupada received special guests and the devotees would bring chairs for them, but Prabhupada's disciples would always sit on thin mats on the lawn and look up at Srila Prabhupada on his elevated seat. The neighborhood was quieter and more peaceful in the evening, and Prabhupada could hear the kirtan in the temple and the cars passing along Venice Boulevard. Men's shout from the nearby karate school were a disturbance Prabhupada had come to tolerate. For an hour or more, Prabhupada would sit listening to a reading from Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, while around him on the grass, sharing the transcendent moment, sat his disciples. Prabhupada was fully satisfied to hear Krishna Lila, and he would sit erect, head held high in a meditative mood. It was only an informal group, but his presence made the occasion very special, momentous. From time to time, he would interrupt the reader to comment. Night would fall, and he would end the reading and leave the garden, walking on the gravel path past the main temple building and up to his second floor suite. Srila Prabhupada so much liked his Los Angeles garden that he decided he wanted one like that at his Mayapur headquarters. With regard to the Mayapur house, I must suggest that you may make one roof garden. On the top of the house, you can put soil of 6 inches and then plant as many tulsi plants and nice bushes. I like the garden very much. Just like here in Los Angeles Temple, you have made one very nice garden for me, and I sit there every evening. So please also make a first-class Mayapur garden. At about 10 in the evening, Srila Prabhupada would usually go into his bedroom and lie down. His servant, Shruta Kirti, would massage his legs, and Srila Prabhupada would then close his eyes. Meanwhile, Rameshwar would be waiting at the bottom of the stairs, hoping the secretary or servant would come down with a message from Prabhupada. Rameshwar, I was too afraid to go into Srila Prabhupada's room, so I would be waiting at the bottom of the stairs, just hanging there, just waiting for one word. Srila Prabhupada would often say something, and it would be passed to me. And then every morning at the Sankirtan, devotees would surround me and ask, what did he say? They would be begging for some nectar. It was an intense experience. We felt that we were all having a special direct connection with Prabhupada. While waiting outside Prabhupada's door, I would be in transcendental bliss, just thinking how we were distributing books as an offering of pure love for our spiritual master. This was the first time the devotees were going to the airports. No one else in the movement was going to an airport except the devotees in Los Angeles. So it was something very special. No one was doing big books in the quantity that we were. At one point, while Srila Prabhupada saw one of my daily Sankirtan reports, he commented, "Who's Rameshwar?" Day after day, Srila Prabhupada was seeing these ecstatic reports sprinkled with nectarian quotes from his Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Leela chapter that had been published. He realized that his disciples were in ecstasy and he asked, "Who are they?" He could see we loved Sankirtan. It was not an artificial burden or that we were struggling. He could see that there didn't seem to be any struggle. It was like fun, bliss, ecstasy. The whole philosophy was there. We were completely tuning into the Chaitanya Charitamrita philosophy. The Lord Chaitanya descends with his confidential associates to spread love of God, but doesn't discriminate who is a fit candidate and who is not. Those were the verses we were putting in daily letter. That was our mood, and Prabhupada loved it. From Shrutakirti's point of view, the evening massage was a very special time because Srila Prabhupada seemed free of the pressure of the day's management. Shrutakirti would bring several night blooming jasmine flowers from the garden, and Prabhupada would place the fragrant blossoms near his nose. During the massage, he would be even quieter and more relaxed than during the Krishna book reading. There was no business to attend, and he had done the hard day's work. Although he would be rising only after only 3 hours rest, now he lay back and wrapped in thought or chanting softly. Some evenings, Srila Prabhupada would delay the massage and slowly walk back and forth in his room, chanting on his beats, and he would sit in his bed and chant. But on most nights, he would lie on his back. While Shrutikirti massaged his legs, if he conversed with his servant at all, it wouldn't be about ISKCON management. He might look at a picture on the wall and say, "How beautiful Krishna is. How could they not be attracted to Krishna?" Or sometimes he would talk about his childhood or other informal topics. But even at this relaxed time, he relished hearing the Sankirtan results. And he would sometimes read Rameshwar's daily report or simply say something about reaching Krishna consciousness. One night after reading Rameshwar's ecstatic daily Sankirtan report, Prabhupada felt moved to write a message on the back of the report, dating the paper April 20th, 1973. He wrote, "My dear boys and girls, you're working so hard for broadcasting the glories of Lord Krishna's lotus feet, and thus my Guru Maharaj will be so pleased upon you. Certainly my Guru Maharaj will bless you his blessings 1,000 times more than me, and that is my satisfaction. All glories to the assembled devotees. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. Envy. Everyone should go with the Sankirtan party as soon as possible." Rameshwar may have been shy or quietly waiting at the bottom of the stairs for the slightest recognition from Srila Prabhupada. But when he received the prize jewel of this handwritten note, he ran off shouting to share the good fortune with any devotee who was still awake. Tripurari. Every morning after Mangalarti, there was always a little group clustered around the door of the temple because you were stopped to talk in the temple while chanting japa early in the morning. So Ramesh was standing at the doorway chanting, and he called us over until a little cluster of devotees were there at the doorway. He showed us Prabhupada's note. Some of the other devotees got frustrated seeing that we were talking during the japa period. They felt we were a distraction or they weren't absorbed in our service or in japa, but actually we were really intensely absorbed in thinking of Sankirtan. And when we returned to our japa, we began chanting with the desire to be able to go out and please Prabhupada. In a few days, Prabhupada's words, everyone should go with the Sankirtan party as soon as possible to reach the other temples. And although Srila Prabhupada soon left Los Angeles, returning to India, his message stayed and deepened the devotees' convictions. In the summer of 1973, the devotees found that at concert they would distribute hundreds of Krishna books in a few hours. The Krishna book, available now in a paperback trilogy, with a foreword by George Harrison, was especially attractive to young people. In July, Rameshwar wrote to Prabhupada in London telling him that the Los Angeles temple was distributing 2,000 Krishna books a week. And at one concert, devotees were distributing 600 books in 2 hours. The devotees in Los Angeles decided that Tripurari and a few other leading Sankirtan men should travel from temple to temple and share their experience. Rameshwar wrote to Prabhupada, "This is the mercy of Sri Rukmini Dwarkadish, the deities of the LA temple, and we can send out so many devotees to other centers. It is a real opulence of New Dwarka." Srila Prabhupada replied on April 3rd. There is no doubt about it. To distribute books is the most important activity. The temple is a place not for eating and sleeping, but as a base from which we send out the soldiers to fight with Maya. Fight with Maya means to drop thousands of millions of books into the laps of the conditioned souls. Just like during the wartime, the bombs are raining from the sky like anything. I like your program of sending out the best men to teach others. This is actual progress of Krishna consciousness to train others. Continue this program so that in the future, every devotee in our movement will know the art of distributing books. This is approved by me. A letter from a woman who had recently received some of Prabhupada's books appeared in July BBT newsletter. The letter had been written on the TWA in-flight stationery. In the SF airport, before I departed for London, the Krishna book was given to me by one of your followers. I never felt so happy and privileged or honored, would be a better phrase. I'm sick of this material rat race. I want a higher life without material riches and games. On her way back to London, she had purchased another book, Rajavidya, in the Chicago airport, and now asked for more help. It is so beautiful, she concluded. As Tripurari traveled and taught his method of Sankirtan, more devotees followed his example and began wearing a wig and conventional dress while selling books. This way of dressing made approaching people much easier and increased the potential for distributing books. Some devotees, however, disapproved. On day in September 1973, Srila Prabhupada's morning walk on Juhu Beach in Bombay, a few of his sannyas disciples brought the matter before him. Prabhupada referred to the many gentlemen strolling along Juhu Beach who would always offer respects to their devotees by folding their hands and saying Hare Krishna. This was the sign of a real Vaishnava, Srila Prabhupada said. Anyone who sees him immediately thinks of Krishna. The devotees should prominently display such Vaishnava marking as tilak, shikas, and neck beads so that people could know here are Hare Krishna people. When Sannyasi remarked that in America devotees were now wearing wigs and dressing like hippies to distribute books, he did not let his own men do this because he felt it self-defeating if people didn't even know they were speaking to a devotee. If someone wanted to distribute books, he concluded Krishna would help that devotee find a place where he could do so without having to disguise himself. Srila Prabhupada turned to others and asked them for their opinions. One devotee suggested that the reason the devotees in America wore disguises was because otherwise they would not be permitted to distribute books in certain places. Prabhupada heard the opinions and then gave his decision. These disguises should be stopped immediately. We shall not in any way sacrifice our standards, he said. We must maintain our principles strictly. This dressing with long hair and karmi clothes is the tendency to once again become hippies. Because you were hippies, the tendency is still there. So this should be stopped. Walking back towards the temple, Prabhupada saw a poor man evacuating by the roadside in public view. He is not changing his standard despite public opinion, Prabhupada said. We cannot maintain our standards as strictly as they are maintaining theirs. A letter was drafted and signed by Kamal Krishna Goswami, Prabhupada's secretary, and Prabhupada signed also on a line marked approved. The letter stated that all Sankirtan devotees should always wear tilak, dhotis, neck beads, and shika, and should depend on Krishna rather than disguises to help distribute books. At the bottom of the letter, however, was P.S. Srila Prabhupada, upon checking the above dated, if they like, they may wear coat and pant, but shika, tilak, shika, and beads, these things should be there. Previously, Srila Prabhupada had addressed this subject in various letters. To Jagadish in Canada, Prabhupada had replied that there is no objection to wearing Western clothes, including a wig or hat. We have to take whatever is favorable position for executing Krishna consciousness, Prabhupada had written. Sometimes we must adapt such means in order to help distribute books. But in February 1973, he had written to Rupanuga that he did not want devotees dressing as hippies. This should be stopped. We should not give anyone cause to call us hippies. But the devotees may dress up in respectable clothes like ladies and gentlemen in order to distribute my literature under special circumstances. Whenever there are individuals, there are bound to be differences of opinion. Srila Prabhupada preferred to be spared of such detailed management. His GBC men should consult among themselves and then present their conclusions to him for a final decision. In this way, Prabhupada had written to be free to concentrate on the translation of Srimad Bhagavatam. The letter from India reached Karandar in Los Angeles. But before announcing all Sankirtan and Western clothes must be stopped, he wanted Prabhupada to hear his side of the story. He gave an elaborate report on the benefits of devotees wearing ordinary Western dress while selling. The main thing Prabhupada seemed to be he concluded was that this reputable appearance, devotees looking like hippies, clean, well-groomed, and presentable. If the distributors were restricted to appearing in public by two-thirds, if extremes and misconceptions have occurred, they should be worked out rather than giving up the whole program. This time, you can go on with your book distribution as you were doing before. This is not any harm. Becoming like hippies. But now I understand from you that this is the work. The progress is very encouraging. A disagreement arose about the book distributors' techniques. A few people had written the ISKCON secretary complaining that they had been misled or pressured into buying the book, a complaint to which devotees responded variously. That book distributors were protective of Prabhupada's order that as many books as possible be distributed. Just because a few devotees had complained, they argued, were no reason to cool down book distribution. They quoted Srila Prabhupada's statements that the opposition to Sankirtan indicates its purity and genuineness. Srila Prabhupada had explained this point in his books and discussing the historical incident of Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan parties being stopped by the Muslim government. Prabhupada had written, we must remember that such incidents took place in the past, 500 years ago. And the fact that they are still going on indicates that our Sankirtan movement is really authorized. And if Sankirtan were an insignificant material affair, demons would not object to it. People in America also objected to public chanting, to the devotees' dress, to the Krishna conscious philosophy, to the food. Someone would always oppose. The main thing the book distributors said was to save the conditioned souls who were heading for a hellish next life. If a person got a book and just one page, his life would be changed. Other devotees, however, including temple presidents, were disturbed by the complaints. Someone recalled that Prabhupada had already addressed this point in 1970s. Do all activities with great enthusiasm. All our activities must be open so that no one may criticize our mission. So all dealings must be outrightly in Krishna consciousness, in the Krishna conscious way. Then Lord Krishna will be pleased to provide all facilities for aiding such sincere service. Srila Prabhupada wanted the book distributors to execute his order, but he was not giving them a license to do anything and everything and claim it was for Krishna. Preaching required expertise, not only in getting people to take a book, but in giving them the right impression. The book distributors maintained that they were doing the best they could, but they would try to improve. If other devotees thought they could do better, then they should demonstrate how to distribute books without disturbing anyone. Distributing books all day, day after day, was hard. Prabhupada was already agitated by their minds and senses and harassed. People already agitated by their minds and senses and harassed by their occupations, government, and personal relationships. No wonder even an innocent devotee sometimes disturbed them. The tactics in question were mostly in book distributors' lines. The distributors would say that they were students, they were helping get young people off drugs, or that books were about how to solve modern day crises. None of these things were true, but the emphasis was sometimes excessive. A mature devotee could speak more directly. Tripurari would tell how the books were described an ancient civilization in which people knew how life should be lived. He would present himself as a representative of an organization that had committees all over the world and where people could benefit from the example of an alternate lifestyle. Tripurari and others were able to be both personal and in a casual way philosophical as they spoke about spiritual life. They made quick friends with strangers and convinced them to take books. But more and more devotees were taking up book distribution, and many were inexperienced. Srila Prabhupada's philosophy was clear, but different interpretations persisted. Without referring to specific techniques, Prabhupada simply stressed the purity of book distribution and encouraged the book distributors to continue without interruption. The main thing was to distribute books. Devotees continued to press Srila Prabhupada for further clarification. The book distributors were concerned that the urgency of book distribution should not be minimized, whereas the other responsible ISKCON leaders were concerned that loose practices might hamper the society's progress. Prabhupada replied to questions by Lilamrta of New York and a letter that became particularly influential. The real preaching is selling books. You should know the tactic, how to sell books, how to sell without irritating. What your lecture will do for 3 minutes, but if he reads one page, his life may be turned. We don't want to irritate anyone. However, if he goes away by your aggravated tactics, then you are nonsense and it is your failure. Neither could you sell a book, nor would he would remain. But if you buy a book, that is real successful preaching. Prabhupada's position was clear. The books should be sold, but expertly, and the least there be any doubt. Prabhupada reiterated that book distribution was the best preaching. The success of your preaching will be substantiated by how many books are sold. Prabhupada also wrote, the art is to sell many books and not to irritate the public. As books continued to go out by millions, many people expressed their thanks to receiving a book. Only occasionally would someone complain. But within ISKCON, the dialogue regarding book distribution techniques continued. When Sri Govinda, the president of ISKCON Chicago, wrote Prabhupada encouraged him in his attempt to reform the devotees engaged in excessive practices. So it is not very much advisable to make lies just to sell books. If we simply stick to distributing how wonderful is Krishna, that will not be a lie. But other thing, lies that will not help us to train ourselves in truthfulness. Lie to someone, not to others. That is not good philosophy. Rather, the Brahmanas are always truthful, even to their enemies. There is sufficient merit in our books, and if we simply describe them sincerely to anyone, they'll buy. That art you must develop, not art of lying. Convince them to give by your preaching the absolute truth, not by tricking. That is the more mature stage of the development of Krishna consciousness. November 93. Scores of men and women were going out every day to distribute books. One November day, the devotees of the New York City temple broke the ISKCON world record by distributing 13,200 pieces of literature. On the same day, they also distributed 15,000 pieces of prasadam. The ISKCON total of 1973 was 41 4,169,000 books sold. When Srila Prabhupada received these figures, he replied to Rameshwar, I have faith in your words, and the next year the figures will be far beyond they were last year. This is the nature of spiritual energy. It is always increasing if we apply our energy. Early in January 1974, Srila Prabhupada again returned to Los Angeles. One morning, he gave a Srimad Bhagavatam lecture stressing book distribution. There is no literature throughout the universe like Srimad Bhagavatam, he said. There is no comparison or competition. Every word is for the good of the human society. Each and every word. Therefore, we stress so much in book distribution. Somehow or other, if the book goes in one hand, he'll be benefited. At least he'll see. I've taken so much prize. Let me see what is there. If he reads one shloka, his life will become successful. If he reads one shloka, one word, this is such a nice thing. Therefore, we are stressing so much book distribution. So much. Please distribute books. Distribute books, distribute books. In year 1974 began what happened to be a serious setback. The Supreme Court ruled against the Vietnamese war protesters distributing political leaflets in private malls. Citizens of non-profit groups, religious included, could solicit on private property only with permission from the proprietor. The malls that the book distributors had frequented were suddenly off limits. The same constitution that barred the devotees from private property, however, gave them access to public property. And when ISKCON devotees filed a lawsuit against the city-owned Las Vegas airport, they won an immediate injunction on the basis that the airport was denying them their right to free speech. This ruling promised to open new era of book distribution with the possibilities of legalizing Sankirtan in all major airports. Devotees saw this as proof that Krishna was working through Prabhupada to increase book distribution. No previous spiritual master had ever distributed Vedic literature on so great a scale. This was another sign that Srila Prabhupada was Krishna's empowered representative. And by the devotees' efforts to follow Prabhupada's order, Krishna was empowering them also, but only if they were willing to go through the trials of surrender and renunciation. Prakosh, I went out one day to the airport and I walked up to one black man and said, "Excuse me, sir." And bam, he punched me right in the face and knocked me down. At that moment, so many thoughts went through my mind. I could just hear Tripurari's words ringing in my ears from the class that morning. We must be determined. So I just said to myself, well, I'll just stand right back and keep trying. I stood up and I got inspiration to just turn around and hand to the next person one of Robert's books. And another time, and the husband and wife approached me, but the husband didn't want anything to do with me. When the woman saw the book was spiritual, she stopped and said, "What's this book about?" I said very abruptly, "This book explains birth and death and what's beyond." She said, "Oh." And she turned to her husband and said, "Please buy it." But he did. I didn't want to. But he said, "I don't want to. Come on, let's go." She said, "Please." But her husband said, "You buy it." And he walked off. She stayed with me and said, "Could you tell me a little bit more about this?" I started to explain the book, and then I said, "Where are you coming from?" She said, "I'm coming from Rochester." Then she revealed to me that she was coming from Mayo Clinic and she had terminal cancer and was going to die. She said, "I desperately want to read this book." She gave me $10 and said, "Thank you very much." Then she took the book and ran off. A little later, she came back and found me. She took my hand and thanked me. These kind of experiences that devotees would have day in and day out gave us feeling of being more like emissaries or representatives of something very special. By this, we became more attached to Srila Prabhupada, and by executing his work, we would see these miracles take place. Keshav Bharati. I used to distribute books in San Francisco airport. I thought that this airport was particularly difficult, and if I could be in Los Angeles, I could probably distribute as many books as Tripurari. I was a little proud. Then I got a chance to distribute with him. I was very outgoing and gregarious, so I didn't have any problem stopping people or anything like that. But half an hour and an hour went by, and Tripurari had distributed 5 or 10 books, but I couldn't get anybody to stop or shake my hand even. It was incredible, but I knew it was because I was too proud. Another hour went by, and still no one would stop or shake my hand. I was bewildered because I wanted to pass out Prabhupada's books. Finally, I just sat down out of frustration. I was nearly crying. Tripurari came up and preached to me. He told me I should pray to Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda in times like this and not worry about it. and that this happens. So I got it together, and then about 10 to 15 people in a row came and talked with me, and some of them took books. So when we discussed it afterwards, we could understand we were just instruments in Lord Chaitanya's hands. This is how we developed the Sankirtan philosophy. Through the book distribution, we came to realize who Prabhupada was and to appreciate him more. Lavangalatika. All day, I would stand at the top of the stairs, and thousands of people would come by, and we would distribute hundreds and hundreds of books. We used to take lines from Prabhupada's books. Tripurari used to talk about the swans taking milk from water. So he used to use that a lot in appreciating someone. He would say these great sages used to know how to separate milk from water, separate the essence. He also said the pictures were windows to the spiritual world. We would say this book is like a brilliant sun that will drive away the darkness of ignorance in the age of Kali. I found the best way to distribute was to use Prabhupada's own words. Prabhupada said, if one reads one line to someone, that person will make 100 times spiritual advancement. One time a devotee complained to Prabhupada that people were throwing some of the books away. But then we could understand that Prabhupada wanted them distributed on a large scale. Not that you keep the book for a special person you thought might be intelligent enough to read it. Because Prabhupada said if they read only one line, they would be very much affected. So we could understand that Prabhupada wanted mass distribution, not just keep them for a special right person. Sura, Vaisheshika was selling books in the airport with me. We would walk up to people and say, well, how are you doing, sir? All glories to Sri Krishna Sankirtan movement, the prime benediction for humanity at large, which cleanses the heart. We were repeating the Sikshaka prayers of Lord Chaitanya right out of the book, and yet he was selling books. The books had pictures of Krishna and devotion. Sometimes some devotees couldn't understand how people could relate to these books, but Prabhupada wanted distributed. And he was saying, preach on the of the book. When a devotee asked Prabhupada, we should say the books, Prabhupada replied, Krishna's distributed books on faith. See the people actually becoming struck with Krishna consciousness. They would and they would become impressed. They would see people appreciating books. We were also talking about it. It was always difficult. Several new parties formed just for distributing books. Tripurari had been traveling as an emissary from Los Angeles. But now, with Srila Prabhupada's permission, he formed a Bhakti Vedanta Book Trust, Sankirtan party of some leading book distributors. The BBT book distributors stationed themselves at various airports around the country. Creating a significant increase in book distribution. Your program is approved by me, Prabhupada wrote to Tripurari. When Tripurari asked if he could take sannyas, Prabhupada replied that he was already doing more than any sannyasi. In one letter, Prabhupada called him the incarnation of book distribution. Book distribution took another great stride. When Tamal Krishna Goswami, Srila Prabhupada's zonal secretary in India for 4 years, returned to US, joining with his friend Vishnu Swami, he helped form the Radha Damodar Sankirtan party, traveling in a bus with Radha Krishna deities to distribute books and hold festivals all over the US. Tamal Krishna Goswami. When we first began the Radha Damodar party, our idea was to make as many devotees as possible by holding festivals at which we chanted Hare Krishna and distributed prasadam. After Krishna sent so many nice young men, it was difficult to keep them always engaged. Then suddenly a letter arrived from Srila Prabhupada in which he said that the kirtan of book distribution was better than the kirtan of public chanting. This transcendental instruction changed the course of our Radha Damodar party. From then on, I concentrated more and more on book distribution, and this gave Prabhupada greater and greater pleasure. I'd been in India for 4 years, but our main program had been enrolling life members. But now I was in America, Srila Prabhupada was reminding me that preaching meant to distribute his books. So I became inspired that our party should distribute so many books that it equal all of other book distribution of the rest of ISKCON worldwide. Day and night, I was thinking how to get out more and more books and thus overflood America with transcendental literature. Srila Prabhupada wrote to me that this was his real ambition, to turn all of America into Vaishnavas.
You want to take a laptop? I can read on the book. Yeah, I know, and I read this supplementary.
You read this?
You want to take your laptop? I can see you.
We'll keep it inside the pajama.
Okay. Yeah, you can see. Okay. Tamal Krishna Goswami. When we first began the Radha Damodar party, our idea was to make as many devotees as possible by holding festivals at which we chanted Hare Krishna and distributed prasadam. After Krishna sent so many nice young men, it was difficult to keep them always engaged. Then suddenly a letter arrived from Srila Prabhupada in which he said that kirtan of book distribution was better than the kirtan of public chanting. This transcendental instruction changed the course of our Radha Damodar party. From then on, I concentrated more and more on book distribution, and this gave Prabhupada greater and greater pleasure. I had been in India for 4 years, but our main program had been enrolling life members. But now that I was in America, Srila Prabhupada was reminding me that preaching meant to distribute his books. So I became inspired that our party should distribute so many books that it equal all other book distributors, that it equal all of the other book distribution of the rest of ISKCON worldwide. Day and night, I was thinking of how to get out more and more books and thus overflood America with transcendental literatures. Srila Prabhupada wrote me that this was real ambition to turn all America into Vaishnavas. Until we formed our Radha Damodar party, the method of distributing books had been that an individual would be given either a large, medium, or a small book, according to the size of the donation. But Prabhupada told me that all types of book distribution, to distribute his large books, was most important. So I was always considering how to increase the number of large books. The problem was that people were willing to give small donations, but rarely would they give us large enough contributions to avoid giving them a large book. Then Krishna gave me the idea that by adding together a few donations from number of persons, at least one of them could be given a large book, while the others could be given a Back to Godhead magazine or a small book. By this method, we were able to increase the distribution of big books tremendously. Prabhupada fully approved of this idea. As long as the book fund received payment for the books, Sri Prabhupada allowed us to pass them out as quickly as we could, irrespective of the size of donation. As long as the book fund received payment for the books. Thus, our Radha Damodar party was able to distribute as many as 50,000 big books in a single month. Srila Prabhupada showed a special interest in the Radha Damodar party. and approved loans from the BBT for the purchase of more buses, thus creating a Sankirtan army traveling in a renovated Greyhound buses. By the end of 1974, the Radha Damodar party had 3 buses, vans, and numerous men. Prabhupada called the buses moving temples, and he urged the Radha Damodar devotees to continue the program with the certainty that they were pleasing Lord Chaitanya. I'm glad that you have understood the importance of my books, Prabhupada wrote. Therefore, I'm stressing it so much. Let everyone take these books. Srila Prabhupada encouraged the Radha Damodar party to expand to the hundreds of buses and thus fulfill the mission of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to bring Krishna consciousness to every town and village. When a tight transcendental competition arose between Los Angeles Temple, Tripurari BBD party, and Radha Damodar party, Prabhupada watched and approved it with pleasure. Another party forming in 1974 was BBD Library Party. It began with Vedananda Goswamis sending some brahmacharis from his traveling party to visit prestigious universities in New England. The man attempted to sell entire sets of Srila Prabhupada books to the professors, and even in the first attempts, they met with great success. Srila Prabhupada had long cherished this idea, and even before coming to America, he had gone to libraries in India with copies of his Srimad Bhagavatam first came to him. By his efforts in New Delhi, the United States Library of Congress had obtained copies of those early ones. Now his desire to see his books placed in all the US libraries and universities was becoming a reality. Within a few months, Professor began writing favorable reviews, and some even ordered Prabhupada's book for their college courses. I very much like this program of standing orders, Prabhupada wrote. Try to increase it up to 50,000 such orders from the libraries. Another party that formed in 1974 was Lilamrta, a group of brahmacharis led by 2 sannyasis. The Lilamrta party would travel and distribute books, donating their profits to Srila Prabhupada projects in Bombay, Mayapur, and Vrindavan. When Srila Prabhupada became ill for several weeks in September of 1974, the book distribution reports were his best medicine. Whenever I get a report of my book selling, he wrote to the library party, I feel strength. Even now in this weakened condition, I have got strength from your report. And during the same illness, he wrote to Rameshwar, regarding book sales figures, please endeavor in this way. This is the only solace of my life. When I hear that my books are selling so nicely, I become energetic like a young man. Srila Prabhupada recovered his health, and by the end of 1974, his BBT was also in extraordinary health. With the temples again competing in a furious Christmas marathon. In America, the BBT reported to Prabhupada that approximately 387,000 hardbound books had been sold during the year, a 67% increase over the previous year, and almost 400,000 is 4 million lakhs to Godheads had been sold, an 89% increase. The American BBT sold the individual temples a total of 6,668,000 pieces of literature, or 60% increase. Such news made Srila Prabhupada become energetic like a young man. And Prabhupada and his book distribution movement headed into 1975 with all signs of increasing, doubling, tripling the already astounding figures of 1974. Srila Prabhupada had created his Bhaktivedanta Book Trust in 1972 as an independent entity to ensure that his books could continue being produced and distributed. The BBT would operate exclusively for the benefit of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, and yet it would exist independently. The trust document stated that the trustees should divide the money from the sale of the books to ISKCON temples into 2 funds, one for printing books and one for purchasing ISKCON properties and building temples. Prabhupada believed that if this 50-50 formula were followed, Krishna would assure the success of ISKCON. Repeatedly, he would refer to this formula in conversations and letters, even in his purpose on Srimad Bhagavatam. Srila Prabhupada gave his PVD trustees authority to make printing plans, and the trustees would then consult him for approval. They would set the standards and guidelines for his PVD trustees to follow. Only after consulting him could they institute changes. And to changes, Prabhupada was particularly averse. Into changes, Prabhupada was particularly averse. He would choose the book size, determine the artwork, and make suggestions about the size of particular printing, about shipping policies, about sales to temples, about almost every aspect of the BBT's publishing activities. Even when certain temples did not remit the payments to the BBT, Prabhupada would become involved. It is not good if such big temples who are setting the example for the whole society do not pay their bills. This is most irregular. I'm trying to retire from the administrative affairs, but if the presidents and GBC men make such disturbances, then how can I be peaceful? Things should be maintained automatically, and it will be peaceful for me. He was a strict manager. According to Vedic instruction, he said, fire, death, and disease should never be neglected. They must be extinguished by all means. Srila Prabhupada saw book distribution as, among other things, the basis for an economically sound ISKCON. Other businesses could also operate, but book selling was the best, for it combined preaching with a good source of income, as he wrote to one of these temple presidents. I'm very encouraged by the report of how nicely our books are being distributed. This is our main business all over the world. If you give full attention to this, there will never be any shortage of funds. And on other occasions, regarding the society's leaders emphasizing business, you should understand what is the meaning of business. Business means to have the preaching. Preaching needs financial help. Otherwise, we have no need for business. So far as I understand, our book business is sufficient to support our movement. Srila Prabhupada also oversaw all BBT loans to temples. Any GBC secretary or temple president requesting a loan would have to approach him. In 1973 and 74, he granted sizable loans for building, purchasing, or improving temples in Dallas, Hawaii, Sydney, Chicago, and Vancouver. He also granted a loan to the Radha Damodar party for buying traveling temples or buses, and one to South America for printing books. Kirtananda Maharaj automatically received a $50,000 each year for Vrindavan. But Prabhupada would deny money requests for projects he considered inconsistent with the purposes of the BBT. On November 6, he wrote to Rameshwar, no, we cannot loan BBT money for any other purposes than what is mentioned in the equipment and restaurants must all be repaid, and no other loans other than for publishing in temple construction can be granted. Beginning in 1974, Srila Prabhupada utilized the BBT profits for constructing his main temples in India, Vrindavan, Mayapur, and especially Bombay. Rameshwar informed the devotees of this special function of the BBT. Srila Prabhupada is personally overseeing all the Indian programs and spending. If 1 rupee is misspent, Srila Prabhupada becomes disturbed and chastises the devotees mercifully. This money is earned by the sweat of many devotees. So why you are not careful? Srila Prabhupada wants to see our Vrindavan temple. Sri Sri Krishna Balram Mandir, completed by Janmashtami. Prabhupada wants to establish Sri Mayapur temple as well. One interesting note in this connection is that in India, I have been told that 10 paisa purchase one brick. 10 paisa means $0.1. Just think every penny you collect may buy one brick in India. Every penny counts toward these transcendental goals. These places in India, Prabhupada wrote, are spiritually potent. By establishing temples in Mayapur and Vrindavan, we assure that the purity of our movement will be kept intact. In October of 1974, Srila Prabhupada wrote to Hamsaduta, his GBC secretary for Germany. Whenever there is any publication in any language, it enlivens me 100 times. Although Srila Prabhupada's order from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was to preach and publish in English language, he had expanded that order to include all the languages and countries of the world. My first concern is that my books shall be published and distributed profusely all over the world. Srila Prabhupada had returned to one of the first devotees in Europe in 1972. Prabhupada wrote always in English, but ever since 1968, when ISKCON had first begun spreading to other countries, he had been talking of printing his books in foreign languages. When in early 1973, a German edition of Bhagavad Gita had been printed, Srila Prabhupada had returned from Sadhuta. You have done the right thing by printing Bhagavad Gita in German language. I very much appreciate that you have done this great service. By the summer, Sankirtan parties have been traveling throughout Germany, distributing several hundred copies of Bhagavad Gita a week. Hamsaduta had promised that he would translate one book a month into German, and when in the fall of 1974, Prabhupada heard of 60 recently printed German translations, replied, "This is very happy news for me. Thank you. Overflood Europe with German books." Srila Prabhupada said that whenever he published a book, he felt that he had conquered an empire. His books were the basis of the spiritual revolution that would eventually change humanity and save it from the pernicious effects of the age of Kali. Produced voluminously Spanish language literature. Srila Prabhupada requested when Hridayananda Goswami had become the zonal leader for South America, Srila Prabhupada had instructed him to emphasize printing and distributing books above opening temples. I also was printing even before. I had big temples in the US, Prabhupada returned. So you may follow the footsteps of the previous acharyas. Hridayananda Goswami had organized a Spanish BBT in Mexico and had made book distribution his priority. Early in 1974, when the Spanish BBT was ready to print translation of Srimad Bhagavatam's first volume, Bhagavad Gita and Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Prabhupada wrote, by printing these books of our Krishna consciousness philosophy, in so many different languages, we can actually inject our movement into the masses of persons all over the world, especially there in the Western countries, and we can literally turn whole nations into Krishna conscious nations. When 100,000 copies of the Spanish Bhakti were printed, Srila Prabhupada wrote, now give them to everyone. Spanish book distribution became the second largest in the world, next to American. Bhagwan, Srila Prabhupada's representative in Southern Europe, had been printing in French and Italian, and as early as December 1972, he had printed Prabhupada's Easy Journey to Other Planets in French. By the beginning of 1974, 3 parties in France were distributing daily 1,000 books. French Sri Isha Upanishad was forthcoming. Wherever devotees went, they knew their program was to chant Hare Krishna, follow the regulated principles, and arrange for printing and distributing Srila Prabhupada's book. When the first devotees had reached South Africa, they had proceeded just according to Srila Prabhupada's desire. And he replied to them, "Your report is very encouraging to me that you distributed 110 Gitas in 2 days in Cape Town." Srila Prabhupada often thought of having his books printed in Russian, and he wrote to the Minister of Education and Culture in the USSR suggesting that they publish a translation of the ancient classical Vedic literature, namely Bhagavad Gita, as already published by the famous London publishing house of MSS Macmillan Company. He also taught his disciples about printing Russian translations in America. When Srila Prabhupada met an interested person proficient in any foreign language, he would request that person to translate his books. In 1972, he had returned. I am also very encouraged to hear that Japanese language translation of some of my books will be brought out soon. Because without books and magazines, what authority or what basis have we got for preaching? Similarly, Srila Prabhupada returned to an American devotee in Indonesia. I'm especially happy to hear that you have got a Chinese boy there who is doing some translation work. Yes, the Chinese speaking portion of the world is very huge and it requires to infiltrate gradually, especially by distributing our literatures widely in Chinese languages. So this so his service is the greatest to Krishna. Later, when Prabhupada heard that the Chinese boy, Yashomati Sutta, had finished translating 3 chapters of Bhagavad Gita into Chinese, he wrote that they should immediately print those 3 chapters as a small book. ISKCON Australia rose to prominence in the book distribution competition and by 1974 was competing with Los Angeles ISKCON and the Radha Damodar Party for the world leadership. By the fall of 1974, about a dozen top Australian and New Zealand distributors were selling daily more than 20 big books each. The centers in Australia, like those in America, more than doubled their book distribution between 1973 and 74. When book distribution had been just beginning in America, in 1970, no books had been available in England. But within a year, Krishna book distribution began there and Srila Prabhupada returned. All of my disciples in London Center are very intelligent and they should unite around the single task of selling Krishna book widely throughout Britain. By 1974, the devotees in Britain were valiantly distributing books. During one busy 6-day period, they distributed 600 volumes of teachings of Lord Chaitanya, 400 of Srimad Bhagavatam, and 1,000 back to God magazines. India was special. There, Srila Prabhupada introduced book distribution through the ISKCON Life Membership Program. Wealthy Indians were more inclined to accept the books as a part of an ISKCON membership package, which included such benefits as free accommodations in ISKCON temples throughout the world. But in India, as elsewhere, Srila Prabhupada wanted his books distributed to colleges, to libraries, to prominent citizens, and to the masses. By the end of 1974, Srila Prabhupada's disciples were all ready to print Hindi and Bengali editions of Back to God. When Srila Prabhupada heard that Western devotees in India were complaining of insufficient engagement, he replied, "I am pleased you are selling many Krishna books daily. All our men should go out with books. There is sufficient engagement." To his chief secretary in India, he wrote, "Engage all of them in book distribution specifically and take with you some Sankirtan party. Without books, we'll make no progress in India." Srila Prabhupada returned to Tejas, his temple president in Delhi. Prabhupada had also trained his leaders in India in the strict policy of 50-50. Proceeds from life membership or any other collection should go 50% to the BBT and 50% for constructions and other projects. On his order, the American BBT had been making donations of books to India, and by 1974, had donated $300,000 worth of literature. Although America was a leading pioneer in book printing and distribution, Prabhupada foresaw worldwide printing and distribution of his books, eventually to surpass that in the US. Srila Prabhupada had created transcendental competition among his disciples. In 1971, he had observed with pleasure Keshava in San Francisco leading the society in Krishna book distribution. Prabhupada had promised that he would leave Los Angeles and stay in San Francisco if Keshava had out-distributed his brother Karandhara. And over the years, he had continued to instigate such competition, fanning the fires of book distribution. He would encourage the leaders to send him reports, and then he would respond with letters, raising the book distribution fever even higher. The whole of ISKCON waited to hear the latest quote from Prabhupada, inspiring them to go on and on. When Srila Prabhupada had given the lecture in January 1974, stressing distribute books, distribute books, distribute books, several devotees in the audience had vowed on the spot to dedicate their lives to that instruction. And when Prabhupada had sent the handwritten note down from his room in Los Angeles, everyone should go with Sankirtan party as soon as possible. That one line had created a spirit of sacrifice and dedication in the hearts of many disciples who felt themselves destined to take up that order as a life and soul. Although Rameshwar had been caught up by the waves of Sankirtan ocean from the beginning, Srila Prabhupada cast Rameshwar's service when he wrote, "Make program to distribute our books all over the world. Our books are being appreciated by learned circles, so we should take advantage. Whatever progress we have made is simply due to distributing this book. So go on and do not divert your mind for a moment from this." When devotees in London reported to Srila Prabhupada that increase in books and magazine sales, he responded by inviting them to compete. I have heard that in San Francisco, they are selling daily not less than 75 Krishna books. So I'm very much encouraged to hear this. Now take the spirit of transcendental rivalry and consult with Dayananda and others there in England to become the first-rate booksellers. When writing to a sannyasi disciple preaching in Scotland, where the devotees were perhaps not fully aware of the scope of book distribution in the US, Srila Prabhupada mentioned the latest book scores from New York and commented, "New York is leading the list." Srila Prabhupada also inspired the society as a whole to compete with its previous year's efforts. Somehow the book distribution must be doubled and tripled as possible. Do it. As soon as the BBT Library Party had been formed, Prabhupada had told the members to get 50,000 orders, and he had asked the Radha Damodar Party to expand to 100 buses. The competition was particularly high between the Los Angeles Radha Damodar Party and Australia, and Srila Prabhupada encouraged them like maestro, calling for fortissimo from the orchestra. Srila Prabhupada was not giving careless, boastful instructions. The determination and sacrifice required to achieve his seemingly unattainable goals he knew well, and he wanted his devotees to work as he worked, with total dedication. He wanted them to try their utmost. He was the logic of hunting for the rhinoceros. He said, if a man attempting to shoot a rhinoceros failed, no one would criticize him. But if he succeeded, it would be considered wonderful. Prabhupada wrote to Rupanuga, "Your Sankirtan reports are very encouraging, especially that one girl, Gauri Dasi, has set an all ISKCON women's record of 108 big books. This is very wonderful. Formerly, this would have been considered impossible. But now, by Krishna's grace, everything is becoming possible. Encourage them all to increase more and more." Some devotees become confused by their god brothers and god sisters, rousing call for competition and rivalry. It seemed like the rivalry of the material world, which they had hoped to leave forever. Srila Prabhupada, however, explained the proper attitude of transcendental competition. Competition and profiteering spirit are always there in the living entity. It is not that they can be artificially removed in some manner. Factually, we saw in Russia that by removing competition and profit calculation from society, the people were not at all happy. And still, these things are going on. So we shall not expect that we are any different. Only different is that our profit is for Krishna's pleasure and our competition is how to please Krishna more than someone else. Even amongst the gopis, there is competition to please Krishna, and there is envy also. But this envy is not material, it is transcendental. They are thinking, oh, she has done something more wonderful than me. That is very nice, but now let me do something even more wonderful. So I'm pleased that you desire for competition with your god brothers to spread Krishna consciousness movement all over the world by printing our books. When a traveling Sankirtan party from one temple intensively distributed books in another city, the authorities at the local temple would often be disturbed. This problem came before Srila Prabhupada, who was inevitably called on to judge and to cool down the fires of competition. Prabhupada wrote to Keshava and Bhutatma, who had traveled all the way from San Francisco to London to distribute books, but had disturbed the devotees there by their fervor. Ultimately, it shall be up to the local temple president if the presence of your party is favorable or not. Everything considered, if he agrees, you may stay. Otherwise, if he judges it is unfavorable at the time, he may order you to go out. But just to avoid these things, better to arrange in advance with the GBC man concerned. Ours is a cooperating movement with Krishna, and the advancement of the Krishna movement at the center. And we must continue to sell as many books as possible. But discuss everything amongst yourself and do it nicely without irritating anyone. That is the art. Seeing the mighty efforts of the top book distributors, some devotees become envious or at least dispirited, thinking themselves useless and unable to please Srila Prabhupada. This problem also came before Srila Prabhupada, who replied, there must be always be competition that gives life, that cannot be separated from life. The perfect society does not eliminate competition, but it eliminates envy because everyone is weak before Krishna. But competition had its limit, as Prabhupada explained to a doubting brahmachari in Florida. It is not so much important the quantity of books that we distribute, but that we serve Krishna as best we can and depend on him for the results. But it should not come to the point of making us lose our Krishna consciousness. When you have these feelings, do not mistake it for enviousness, but take it to be an indirect appreciation of the service done by your other god brothers. This is spiritual. In the material world, when someone surpasses us in some way, we become angry and plan how to stop him. But in the spiritual world, when someone does some better service, we think, oh, he has done so nicely, let me help him to execute his service. Competition might have been a catalyst, but by steadfastly distributing Srila Prabhupada books, the members of the Krishna consciousness movement were experiencing the essence of loving service to Krishna in separation, which is the highest spiritual ecstasy. Don't try to see God. Srila Prabhupada's spiritual master often said, but act in such a way that God sees you. In other words, by submissively acting on the order of the servant of the servant of the servant of Krishna, Prabhupada's disciples were sure to attract Krishna's loving attention. The quickest way to catch Krishna's attention, Srila Prabhupada said, was to direct another person to Krishna consciousness. The book distributors therefore felt a special reciprocation with their spiritual master, and this impelled them to go on serving and distributing. Sanjaya. The quickest way to catch Krishna's attention, Srila Prabhupada said, was to direct another person to Krishna consciousness. The book distributor therefore felt a special reciprocation with their spiritual master, and this impelled them to go on serving and distributing. Sanjaya, philosophically, we saw that going out Distributing books was what our spiritual master wanted us to do. We knew that. That was clear to us. We also had a real sense of idealism that these books and magazines would change the world. Once you come to Krishna consciousness, you actually see how crummy the world really is, how really contaminated things are, how envious people are, how horrible material life is. You can see that. You don't feel that you can, no, you don't feel that you yourself can change it, but you feel that whoever gets one of Prabhupada's books looks at it will be changed in a spiritual way. There was no question about it. We also felt a big change would come in the world in the future as Krishna consciousness spread. Prabhupada also said that if people just touch one of these books, their lives will change. Our faith was in the books in Srila Prabhupada, Keshav Bharti Maharaj. When you pass out a book, there is certain reciprocation from Prabhupada. There was a dramatic difference in our internal experience when a person would take a book compared to just taking some incense or something. We would actually experience Prabhupada's association all day by distributing those books. We didn't feel left out just because certain devotees were physically closer to Prabhupada. Book distributor always goes strong, and the book distributors always got strong enlivenment. We would read about Haridas Thakur going out and rolling on the ground and begging people to chant. That kind of thing would inspire us. Vaishashika Prabhu. We had Prabhupada's books in different letters from him. And we also knew that if we distributed a lot of books, we could get our name in the newsletter. And we would think of how Prabhupada would read it. But I was just trying to keep up with the others. Sometimes I would go a couple of hours without giving anyone a book. Everyone else would just be passing them out like crazy. I would try, and people would all but spit in my face. They were pushing it around. It was very heavy for me. I would sometimes just walk off and start crying. It was so heavy, but I knew this book distribution was pleasing to Prabhupada and I wanted to be a part of it. We just used to think how Prabhupada was spending so much of time behind dictating machine, just writing these books. We would meditate on how he would and meditate how he would sleep just a few hours a day, minimizing everything, minimizing everything else to write these books. So we were also trying to cut down our other activities and just go out and distribute books. Prabhupada said a devotee should live in the mood of 6 Goswamis. So we were singing those prayers every day. We felt a real connection. Even in the beginning, a devotee told me, "Where is Prabhupada? Do you know?" And then he said, "He's in the books." That mood was always there. He always felt the connection. Hmm. We used to think how Prabhupada was spending so much time behind the Jagatadhatri Devi Dasi. When I was distributing Prabhupada books, I understood that that was the most pleasing thing I could do for him. I was helping him to fulfill his spiritual master's instruction. So he was pleased. And he was even more pleased if I did it nicely. I always used to hear the story about how Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati would be happy if someone went out and distributed even one magazine because it's actually the mood of Sankirtan, of going out and trying to give mercy to the conditioned souls that counts. I always wanted to do a welfare work. I like the feeling of doing something for people So this is the sana bonum of helping people. You are helping them to go back to Godhead. So that was my motivation. And we automatically become purified by bringing other living entities to Krishna, Tripurari, Raj. I got inspired mostly by Prabhupada's greatness, how he was staunchly following his Guru Maharaj. It was his Guru Maharaj's order, and therefore he was doing it. I was never very scholarly or intelligent. I never thought that I had much brains or talent. I was never trained practically in any kind of skill. I didn't have much education. I took it like that, that I was talking to the most foreign people and that I was the most foreign myself. I was just doing what Prabhupada wanted because he wanted. I would pray to Prabhupada to help me realize why he wanted book distribution. Then within I would get inspiration and it would come out in all of my thoughts about book distribution. That time that I stayed out at the airport when all the devotees went back with Prabhupada to temple very much affected my whole spiritual life. I was very much intimately connected with Srila Prabhupada, but my closest association with him was by following his instruction and just getting down to work and not trying to enjoy the spiritual master, but serve him. That time that I stayed out at the airport and all devotees went back with Prabhupada. Do you know this? Do you know this pastime, Mataji? You know this pastime? So what happened is that there was Prabhupada was coming and everybody was trying to greet Prabhupada. And Tripurari Maharaj was a big book distributor. And Prabhupada, when he came out of the airport, he said, "Where is Tripurari Maharaj?" The Tripurari Maharaj was distributing books. And he never came to greet Prabhupada also. And when Prabhupada went to temple, everybody went to temple, but Tripurari Maharaj stayed back distributing Prabhupada books. So Maharaj is saying that time that I stayed out at the airport when all devotees went back to the Prabhupada, to the temple, very much affected my whole spiritual life. I was very much intimately connected with Prabhupada, but my closest association with him was by following his instructions and just getting down on work, not trying to enjoy spiritual master. So, thank you. Vrindavan Balvila Sini Devi Dasi. When Prabhupada gave the famous lecture in Los Angeles, distribute books, distribute books, distribute books. Right then, I wanted to take it up. Whenever he wrote to Rameshwar, it was really to Rameshwar and company. We all felt included. We are all eternal distributors, but team together, and I wanted to be a part of it. It was Lord Chaitanya's eternal Sankirtan party, and we all wanted to be a part of it. It's going on in every planet, in every universe. I know it's pleasing to Srila Prabhupada. I would relate up to book distribution like the battle of Kurukshetra. It's the battle, but Krishna is right there. It's like Kurukshetra number 2. I'm sure all book distributors feel like that. Excuse me. You feel like Krishna is right there and he's going to win. You just have to take shelter of him. You may not win this battle, but you win the overall war. So, so I always felt connected with Prabhupada because he's telling us in his books about the greatest devotee that we can take shelter. It's all by his books. He's giving us these books and he's in these books. I would relate to the book distribution like that of the Battle of Kurukshetra. It's a battle, but Krishna is right there. It's like Kurukshetra number 2. I'm sure all book distributors feel like that. You feel like Krishna is right there and is going to win. You just have to take shelter of him. You may not win this battle, but you win the overall war. So I always felt connected with Prabhupada because he's telling us in his books about the great devotees that we can take shelter of. It's all by his mercy. He's giving us these books and he's in these books. Sura. We were so much addicted to selling Srila Prabhupada books that we didn't want to do anything else. We would just go straight to the airport and start distributing and not stop. except for maybe a 20-minute lunch break and maybe some reading for 20 minutes, otherwise non-stop from 7:30 or 8 at night. Really felt that Srila Prabhupada was protecting us. One time, at the outer airport, I was giving BBT newsletter. Maybe it was due to the exhaustion, or maybe it was due to some false sentimentality or whatever, but I was reading Prabhupada's remarks about the distribution. And I became very moved. I was by myself at the airport. I started crying because I thought how the devotees all over the world are so beautiful, so wonderful about it, distributing books and working so hard. I was just really appreciating Prabhupada and the Krishna consciousness movement. Prabhupada has said something in the newsletter about book distribution. It was just touched me. We were so absorbed in books, books, books that whenever Prabhupada would say anything about book distribution, we would go nuts. That meant it was our connection to Prabhupada. We weren't big guns who could sit at the meeting with Prabhupada or get personal attention so much. Maybe during some morning walks at the Mayapur festival, we got to sneak in with the sannyasis. But otherwise, our book distribution was our connection with Prabhupada. When he would mention something about book distribution, it would be our life and soul. 1 minute, Mataji. Okay. Lavanga Latika Devi Dasi. Having heard Srila Prabhupada speak and knowing that he was always reading from his books, the Srimad Bhagavatam, and that he was preaching that you have to distribute this knowledge to others, made it all very simple. That is, you just knew that this was Srila Prabhupada's desire. He was always telling us that he was giving us this knowledge, and that once we have this knowledge, we have to distribute it to others. Srila Prabhupada came to America to preach to his disciples. So we must do it because it is Prabhupada's desire. He spends so much time translating these books to be distributed. You just want to distribute it to others. And you want people to have these books in their homes. Vrindavan, India, April 20, 1975. Srila Prabhupada installed the deities for the grand opening of the Krishna Balram Mandir. Almost 1,000 disciples were present, and the governor of Uttar Pradesh was the guest of honor. After years of hard endeavor, the grand opening was a climatic triumph for Srila Prabhupada and his movement. While still standing at the altar, after having offered the first arati to Krishna Balram, Prabhupada addressed the crowd, explaining that this was an international temple where people from all over the world could come to worship and take shelter of Gauranitai, Krishna Balram, and Radha Krishna. Later that evening, Srila Prabhupada sat in his room with few GBC men. The buttons on his kurta opened because of the heat. His legs and bare feet extended under the low table. He relaxed and his men sat close around him, the dim light of the best man. It was a milestone, he said, but still they had to go forward, not merely savor their success. Many things were still required to make the temple and guest house operative. Srila Prabhupada was thinking beyond Vrindavan. His temple construction is so important, he said, that I am willing to spend many lakhs to open a temple like this. And yet, as important as it is, the book production is even more important. This was a significant reaffirmation of the priority of the book production. Even while in the midst of this splendid temple opening, he was stressing that book production was more important. Srila Prabhupada seemed displeased. However, because for months his Chaitanya Charitamrita had been delayed by his Sanskrit editor, he said with a scowl that although he had finished the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it remained unpublished. He had also completed all the 4 volumes of the fourth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam and was beginning the fifth, yet only one volume of the fourth canto had been published. One of the devotees present, not understanding Prabhupada's point, remarked that since Prabhupada was going next to Hawaii, he would be able to ride there in peace and quiet. Prabhupada replied that he was not encouraged to ride when his manuscripts were not being published. The BBD Press, after several years in New York, was about to relocate to Los Angeles, where Rameshwar would become the new BBD Press supervisor. Rameshwar, unaware of the delay in publishing the Chaitanya Charitamrita manuscript, learned of it now. In Vrindavan, he promised Prabhupada that he would immediately get the press set up in Los Angeles and begin producing Chaitanya Charitamrita. The Srila Prabhupada had completed the entire Chaitanya Charitamrita manuscript in 18 months during 1973 and 74 was a remarkable feat. In those same months, he had been intensely engaged in many affairs of management while constantly traveling. He had confronted major problems with leaders who had left their posts. He had personally attended to GBC duties in India. He had dealt with other ISKCON managerial affairs. He had authorized many large BBT loans and had approved the expansion and development of ISKCON in all areas of the world. In addition to responding regularly to large volumes of mail, speaking daily to guests, and giving Bhagavatam lectures wherever he went. His only time for writing had been on arising at 1 in the morning, and he had persistently worked 2 or 3 hours each day. While Srila Prabhupada traveled from Vrindavan to Australia, Rameshwar and Radha Vallabh worked in Los Angeles to establish a new BBT offices. Prabhupada was still meditating on his completed Chaitanya Charitamrita manuscript, waiting to be published. From Australia, he wrote, "The Chaitanya Charitamrita is a complete 12 parts and only 3 parts of oration. And now the 5th canto is almost finished. So why these books are not being published? This is our first business. Immediately this pending books, 17 in total, must all be published. Why the delay? The US printer's binding is better than Dai Nippon. So some may be printed in the US and some in Japan. But the pending books must be finished in a very short time. When I see so many books pending, it does not encourage me to translate. When I see books printed, I become encouraged to write more and more. We can talk this over more in Hawaii. Now you and Hansadut expedite the publishing work. This is your business. And push on the selling. You request Tripurari Maharaj in this connection, along with others. Now, Bhavananda Swami and Gargamuni Swami are there. They are also expert in pushing this on. By combined effort, publish as quickly as possible and immediately Chaitanya Charitamrita should be done. Excuse me. In Los Angeles, Rameshwar had only completed the lease agreement for the new building for the press. The BBD artists had just arrived, and the editors, proofreaders, and other production workers would soon be coming. The press has purchased a computer, typewriter, and the devotees were being trained to use it. Carpenters knocked down walls to build a photo lab and dark room. Additional plumbing had to be installed, and the entire press had to be set up within 1 month. Srila Prabhupada was coming in June, everything would have to be ready and running. By the time Srila Prabhupada reached Hawaii in May, the press in Los Angeles was preparing for operation. Srila Prabhupada's secretary phoned Los Angeles often. Prabhupada is angry. He keeps talking about the unpublished books. You would better be prepared when he arrives. Rameshwar and Radha Vallabh had investigated the necessities and the difficulties in printing the Chaitanya Charitamrita manuscript, which they concluded would come to 17 volumes. One of the main problems they discovered was the lack of an expert Bengali editor. Most of the Chaitanya Charitamrita was in Bengali. All the BBD editors were experienced in Sanskrit. because they were not proficient in God. The work was progressing slowly. Also, Srila Prabhupada wanted many paintings in his books. An art department would need many months to meet his request. Never before had the BBT lagged so far behind Prabhupada, behind Srila Prabhupada. Rameshwar and the Radha Vallabhs, training their brains to produce books quickly and efficiently, devised a stick-up production schedule. By the old schedule, they would publish a book every 3 or 4 months. But on the new schedule, they decided they would produce a book a month. In that way, they would eventually catch up with Srila Prabhupada. Rameshwar was eager to present Prabhupada with his plan when he came to Los Angeles. More phone calls came from Prabhupada's secretary. Prabhupada had heard about the preparation of the press building, but he had also heard that his name had not been displayed at the front of BBT building. He was also insistent to preserve ISKCON display succession, forcing that unless ISKCON stressed A.C. Bhaktivinoda Swami as a founder Acharya, in the future person might claim the rights of ISKCON leadership or ownership of ISKCON properties. In the rush for completing the buildings, the BBT managers had overlooked this important detail. June 20, 1975. On arriving in Los Angeles, Srila Prabhupada received a joyous welcome. He was accompanied by the leading sannyasis and GBC secretaries, including Kirtanananda Swami, Vishnu Swami, Brahmananda Swami, Tamal Krishna Goswami, and others. Later, sitting in his room, one of his favorite in all of ISKCON, he spoke only briefly about the backlog of unprinted books. He seemed mildly disturbed and said little. He was very pleased, however, to see the temple and the deities of Rukmani Dwarikadesh. In his short arrival speech, he had explained why he was so urgently pressing his disciples to produce his books. I have no personal qualification, he had said, from the plushly upholstered Vyasasana. But I am simply trying to satisfy my Guru. That's all. My Guru Maharaj asked me that if you get some money, you print books. So there was a private meeting talking. Some of my important grandbrothers also were there. It was in Radhakund. So Guru Maharaj was speaking to me that since we have got this Bagh Bazaar marble temple, there has been so much of dissension. And everyone thinking who will occupy this room or that room. I wish, therefore, to sell this temple and marble and print some books. Yes, so I took up this from his mouth that he is very fond of books. And he told me personally, if you get some money, print books. Therefore, I am stressing on this point. Where is book? Where is book? So kindly help me. That is my request. Print as many books as possible in many languages as possible and distribute throughout the whole world. Then the Krishna consciousness movement will automatically increase. The next morning, while walking on the Venice beach, Srila Prabhupada delivered an extraordinary ultimatum. Surrounded by devotees, he walked along, poking the sand softly with his cane. This 17 volumes unpublished, they began, are a great problem for our movement. Yes, Prabhupada, Rameshwar responded, attentive and concerned. The other devotees also noted. Commiserating something must be done. Yes, Prabhupada continued. They must be published immediately. Yes, Prabhupada, Rameshwar replied obediently. So I think they can be printed in 2 months. Prabhupada said conclusively, Rameshwar wasn't sure he had heard correct. The press had only just opened. The artist didn't even have the lights in the room. 2 months was illogical, impossible. Now was the moment to tell Srila Prabhupada the plan for increased production. Rameshwar stepped closer. Srila Prabhupada, he began. We have been Jai. Srila Prabhupada. We have been meeting about this, and now the press is finally here and established. I think we can increase production 4 times. We think that now we can go from producing 1 book a year 4 months to producing one of your books every month. Now both Rameshwar and Radha Vallabh were walking together beside Srila Prabhupada, Tamal Krishna Goswami and Brahmanand Swami, walking on his other side. 1 book every month, Srila Prabhupada said, as a thinking out loud and considering it. That means over 1 year, it is not fast enough. The other devotees look over at Rameshwar and Radha Vallabh, who glance at each other. You have to do all the books in 2 months' time, Srila Prabhupada said again. They had clearly heard it this time, and the 2 managers were stunned in disbelief. Srila Prabhupada, Rameshwar said, I think that's impossible. Maybe we can go faster. Srila Prabhupada suddenly stopped, planting his cane firmly in the sand. He turned to Rameshwar and said, without anger, but very bravely, impossible is a word found in the Fool's Dictionary. Suddenly, Rameshwar realized his spiritual life was on the line. To say impossible now will mean he had no faith in Krishna's representative, no faith in the power of God. He must throw away his material estimation and rational common sense. While Rameshwar and Radha Vallabh stood speechless, Srila Prabhupada resumed walking, accompanied by the others. The 2 devotees hurried to catch up, but now everyone looked at them to say, come on, stop doubting, you have to do it. Rameshwar asked Srila Prabhupada if he could discuss this with the other devotees and the press and report back. Oh yes, Prabhupada replied, whatever is required. Rameshwar and Radha Vallabh dropped back, while Srila Prabhupada and the others continued down the beach. Srila Prabhupada returned to the temple and toured the new press facilities, a graphic arts building, editorial building. While walking outside on the 2nd floor veranda, he noticed below a 2-foot strip of bare earth running between the 2 buildings. He seemed annoyed and said that they should plant grass here. In the layout room, a transparency of baby Krishna carrying Nanda Maharaj's shoes was on the light table, and Srila Prabhupada began laughing when he saw it. He approved of the new typesetting equipment, which worked faster than the previous equipment. And when the devotees demonstrated it for him, remarked that in India, he had dreamed of having such press. In Radha Vallabha's office, Prabhupada sat in the production manager's chair and looked up at the large bulletin board that displayed all the steps in the production of book. He laughed and said, for someone like me, this makes it even more complicated. Srila Prabhupada walked into every room in the 2 buildings and saw all this equipment. This modern technology was fine, he concluded, as long as they could use it to meet the deadline of 17 books in 2 months. Otherwise, the equipment was like the technology of the material scientist who tried to go to the moon, useless. All through the morning program at the temple, Rameshwar and Radha Vallabh tried to concentrate on chanting the japa in Prabhupada's class, but all they could think of was arranging for the production of 17 volumes in 2 months. And by the time they met with the press workers, they had become convinced it could be done. It was as if some mystical power was going to descend. Somehow or other, it could be done. So they presented the plan and convinced the other workers. It can be done, Rameshwar said. Later, talking with Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada replied. But there were some conditions, Rameshwar said. For the Bengali editing to go smoothly, the editors would have to be able to regularly consult Srila Prabhupada. Immediately, Prabhupada agreed, adding that he was prepared to stay in Los Angeles as long as necessary, ensure that they met the 2-month deadline. Another condition Rameshwar raised was that the artist would be working as quickly as humanly possible, but the paintings might not be of the best quality. A blind uncle is better than no uncle, Srila Prabhupada said. When Rameshwar mentioned that the artist would have many technical questions, Prabhupada agreed to make time to answer them. He also agreed that photographs of Indian holy places connected with Chaitanya Lila would be used to supplement the paintings. After the meeting with Srila Prabhupada, Rameshwar and Radha Vallabh felt that they had a chance. They left Srila Prabhupada's room, running down the stairs. The marathon was on. Chapter 46, Preaching to America, Part 1. Although Srila Prabhupada had said he would stay in Los Angeles, He soon decided to follow his original trial plans, feeling compelled to see the welfare of his disciples around the country. He left on tour of 13 ISKCON centers in US and Canada. About half a dozen of sannyasi disciples traveled with him. Denver, June 27, 1975. Srila Prabhupada was pleasantly surprised to see the brick church building that was now Krishna's temple. The temple hall was spacious, and afternoon sunshine streamed into the room. He beheld small golden forms of Radha and Krishna on the altar and then walked to the rear of the hall. Where he sat on the Vyasasana, allowing the devotees to bathe his feet. These devotees, unaccustomed to being with their spiritual master, were awkward in performing the standard formalities, but they were enthusiastic and happy. Sitting on the floor before Srila Prabhupada, Dashrath began singing, O Vaishnava Thakur, accompanying himself on the harmonium. Srila Prabhupada liked his singing. When his song was finished, asked, You know the meaning? Dashrath replied, O Venerable Vaishnava, O Sir of mercy, please be merciful unto your servant. Anandeva added, I pray for the shade of your lotus feet. Yes, Prabhupada acknowledged, and he began to speak about the song's author, Narottam Das Thakur. He then quoted another song by Narottam Das Thakur, Charya Vaishnava Seva Nishtara Paichikeva. This Krishna consciousness movement is for Nishtar to say. Nishtar means to be liberated from the capture of Maya. When we hear songs by the Vaishnava, that is called liberation. Although devotees had heard before of Narottam Das Thakur, although Although the devotees had heard before of Narottam Das Thakur and of liberation, they listen especially attentively now. Here was the Vaishnava Thakur in person, come to teach them to control their passions, to impart to them the strength to carry out the Sankirtan movement, and to bless them, as Narottam Das Thakur described, with one drop of faith with which to attain the great treasure of the holy name. So I am very glad to see this temple, Srila Prabhupada said to the group of about 40 devotees. You have purchased it. That's nice. Very good space. And the devotees here are very nice. So our process is very simple, that we dedicate our life to the service of the Vaishnavas. And according to his direction, we engage in Shravanam Kirtanam, hearing and chanting of Vishnu, and refrain from the sinful activities. Then life is successful. We do not require to be very learned or very rich men or take birth in very high family. From driving Srila Prabhupada to the park, a friend of the Denver temple had lent his Lincoln Continental, formerly Richard Nixon's presidential limousine. For driving Srila Prabhupada to the park, a friend of the Denver temple had lent his Lincoln Continental, formerly Richard Nixon's presidential limousine. Brahmananda Swami pointed out the car's luxurious features to Prabhupada, including bulletproof glass windows. So bullet is expected also, Prabhupada laughed. Brahmananda remarked that the world leaders were always in anxiety. Prabhupada agreed. In the material world, there's always danger at every step. He began talking of Indian politics. Indira Gandhi and Jayaprakash Narayan in bitter disagreement. Both of them are in distressed position. Prabhupada said, I'm thinking of writing them on the basis of our Bhagavad Gita. Do you think it is advised? When Srila Prabhupada mentioned that Indira Gandhi occasionally went to see her guru, Anandamayi Brahmananda remarked that her guru had commented favorably about the chanting of Hare Krishna. So what do you think? Prabhupada asked his sannyasis. Tamal Krishna, Bhavananda, and Saswarupa. Shall I write? I made a draft of letter this night. So you come and see. Let us take a chance. We want good for everyone. And this is the only medicine, Hare Krishna, for all wrongs. Para Dukha Dukhi. People are suffering. Subal Prabhu ki jai. The devotees agreed the letters would be a good idea, although they doubted whether the politician would take the advice or even read such letters. Prabhupada then asked about the public response to Krishna consciousness in Denver. They get nice attendance on Sundays. Swatsarupa answered, many people come. There is a good hope, Prabhupada affirmed. Good book distribution here too. Prabhupada nodded. That's the most successful. But book distribution is going on nicely. That is successful. Because people are in gross ignorance. They are taking this temporary life as everything. Very horrible condition. They're trying to explain what is the actual life. They arrived at the park, which was filled with tall old pines, maples, and oaks. Getting out of the car, Prabhupada stood facing a pond. In the distance, he could see the Denver skyline and the Rocky Mountain. He could hear the quacking of ducks and geese from the pond. A second carload of devotees arrived, and Prabhupada and his followers began walking along a paved path beside the lake. Very nice car, Prabhupada, and not far away, not far away. They soon came upon a large modern building, the Museum of Natural History. That means Darwin's theory, that's all, said Prabhupada. The whole civilization is based on this Darwin's theory. How long you shall keep history? Do you know what is the history of the sun? When it was created? When it came into appearance? Can Darwin give us the history of sun or the moon or the sky? Where is the history? There is history, but where is your history? You simply imagine there was a chunk and it became manifested as the moon and sun. And I'm also different. What do you actually know? How has this cosmic manifestation come into this? So, what do you want to read? You want to read? You want to read? No. The sun rose with a dazzling golden rays and quickly warmed the air. The devotees offered Prabhupada information about Denver, the mile-high city. It was good for health, they said. Prabhupada said that climate was in Punjab, the upcountry India. He also heard how Colorado was known as cow country because its main industry was cow slaughter. Prabhupada walked past a zoo, down a hill. He passed a Civil War cannon and saw many colorful flower beads, expensive lawns, and everywhere the tall pines. Although the air seemed chilly for July, the brightness of the rising sun was unusual, and the natural scenery of the park stood out sharply. Srila Prabhupada also appeared bathed in the golden light as he walked briskly, wrapped in his great chadar, talking from time to time with his disciples. Disciples. Prabhupada mentioned Gopal Agarwal, the man at whose home he had first stayed after arriving in America in 1975. Thank you, thank you, thank you. दो कॉपी किसके लिए? ठीक है. Prabhupada mentioned Gopal Agarwal, the man at whose home he had first stayed after arriving in America in 1976. Gopal's father, he said, was a very rich man in Mathura, and Gopal had come to America to be an electrical engineer. He was not doing as well he would have been by staying in India. Prabhupada said Gopal's wife Sally used to say, my husband is a lost child of his parents. People are working so hard day and night for these temporary years. Oh. Suniye Mataji, people are working so hard day and night for these temporary years. Prabhupada said, although by laboring less than that, they can go back to God. Super. People are working so hard day and night for these temporary years. Prabhupada said, although by laboring less than that, they can go back to God. Just to get a very nice car, a very nice life, a few children by working so hard, And by the same labor, if he devote himself to Krishna consciousness, then he goes back to home, back to Godhead. And what is wrong there? We have got so many Krishna conscious devotees. What is wrong there compared to this ordinary karmis? Are you unhappy? What do you think? All that efforts will be finished, and after death, they'll become a cat or a dog or a tree. Devotee. Sometimes Srila Prabhupada, even if you explain this and people seem to understand, still they won't do anything about it. Prabhupada, so you have to constantly call them. Just like when a man is sleeping, you have to call him constantly. Mr. John, wake up, you rust. Because why are you sleeping? You've got this opportunity here for life. Now get up, take up Krishna consciousness, and solve all your problems. Devotee. Some people say that if you want to do this, that is all right. But we shouldn't preach and insist to them. Everyone has his own way, Srila Prabhupada. But you are a human being. You rascal, you are sleeping. And we are just trying to awaken you. Suppose a child was going off to one side where there is danger. We are human beings, so we shall say, no, go to right. We shall try to save him. That is our business, to do good to others. That is the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Not that this man is going to hell, so let him go to hell. Oh, at least I am happy that it's not humane. A devotee, a lot of times, Srila Prabhupada will say we are just escaping material life. They say we don't have jobs and then we should work for a living. Prabhupada, addressing an imaginary challenger. You rascal, you have no money to work. But we are rich men, we are Krishna's sons. So why shall I work like you, ass? An ass will work unnecessarily. We are not asses. Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada said, establishes Lord Krishna as the proprietor of everything. The servant of Krishna, therefore, should not be expected to work hard like asses. Asses work hard, not human beings. This was also the instruction of Rishabhadev, Srimad Bhagavatam. Rishabhadev told his sons that human life is not meant for working hard simply for food and sense enjoyment. That was the business of hogs. Prabhupada, tell them they're working like hogs and we are living like human beings. That is the difference. If somebody does not work hard like a hog, does that mean he's escaping? Srila Prabhupada continued to vigorously develop his theme. He argued very seriously and yet in a delightful way, showing the fortune of one who becomes a servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The devotees could not refrain from smiling and laughing as they hurried to keep up with his pace and with his Krishna conscious logic. Prabhupada, I was a student of economics. There we learned Marshall's theory. He says that human nature is that unless a person has obligation, he will not work. That is the beginning of economics. If one already has something sufficient to eat, then he will not work. So if we are sufficient to eat, why shall we work? What is the answer? This is not escaping. It's coming to light. To not work and yet get our necessities as comfort, but to work hard. To not work and get our necessities comfort, but to work hard and just to get the bare necessities of life. That is for the hogs and dogs. Okay? Devotee, they have no faith but trust that this can be done. Prabhupada, see us, you rascal, see, open your eyes. See that we have no business. We have no food stock. Still we are not worried. We do not know that what shall we eat in the evening. But still we are not worried. I came to your country without any sustenance. Prabhupada argued that man's economic necessities could be easily settled by keeping cows on land. He said that men have made an unnecessary complex arrangement just for maintaining the body, thereby forgetting the purpose of human life. When a devotee contended that not everyone had the opportunity to get land, Prabhupada said that this was simply mismanagement. There was plenty of land in America. Devotee, Srila Prabhupada, They accuse us of being parasites. Srila Prabhupada. No, a parasite means if he takes others' property and tries to enjoy it. But we are not enjoying others' property. We are enjoying our Father's property. Ishavasham idam sharvam. Krishna is the proprietor. Why do you say parasite? We are good children of Krishna. And Krishna says, don't worry, I shall give you everything. Actually, Krishna says that, why are you working so hard? Just surrender to me and I'll give you protection, whatever you want. So we are giving everything. Why say parasite? Devotees were well aware that Srila Prabhupada did work, traveling constantly, managing his worldwide Krishna conscious society, rising in the middle of night to translate Srimad Bhagavatam. And his disciples also worked hard. But they did not work like animals and animal-like persons for things that would be destroyed in time. And they did not work at horrible enterprises that ruined the best part of human nature. They did not work like asses and claim they had no time left in the day to chant the holy name of the Lord. Prabhupada, now this is a nice part, but nobody's coming here. We, Krishna conscious people, we are taking advantage. So they are escaping and we are, so they are escaping or we are escaping. Just see how foolish they are. They work so hard, but they are not taking advantage, but we are taking. So our policy is that you work hard and we go and take from you. This is not escaping. This is intelligence. Okay. Srila Prabhupada's example was delightful revelation to the devotees, and they laughed at the obvious truth. Here they were, walking so pleasantly with their spiritual master, and yet no one else was coming to enjoy the park. Prabhupada, but as soon as we walk, you also come and join. They will not. They say, no, we shall work like this. We are asking everyone, come here, but they will not come. That is their enviousness. Therefore, they say we are escaping and living at the cost of others. They see that we have got so many cars and the devotees' faces are bright. We are eating nicely and have no problems. Today, Mangala Madani made 5 kachoris.
Comments for PR.
Hey, Prabhuji, can I call you in 5 minutes? Is it okay? Anything wrong? Something happened? What happened? What happened? He's okay or not? He's okay or not? No, I'm not. What happened? What happened? Okay, okay. I don't. Okay. Okay, I'm right here. Yes. No, I'm in Chicago. I'll call him. Okay. Yeah, yeah, fine. Siddhari, call Siddhari. Siddhari, Siddhari. Thank you. Thank you. I'll call you in 5 minutes. I'm reading a book in the temple. If we ask them to chant Hare Krishna and dance, or is very big, have it asked for them. As soon as they will come, they will know that there is no tea, no liquor, no meat, no cigarette. You can say that we are so you can say that we are escaping these things, but we are not escaping happiness. They are escaping happiness. When Srila Prabhupada did not have specific engagement in Denver, a few of his men sometimes gather in his room. Occasionally, he would provoke some of them into mock debate with him. Srila Prabhupada, everything must come from something. No one can deny that. Now we give our challenge. Do you know what the absolute truth is? Brahmananda. We know there is an absolute truth, but at this time, we cannot directly say what it is. Prabhupada immediately replied that if a person admits not knowing the absolute truth, that person has no grounds for rejecting the Vedic explanation of the absolute. That person cannot deny Krishna is the absolute truth. If you don't know the philosophy Prabhupada said, then you must agree to hear from an authority who does. Swatswarup Maharaj. Yes, that argument is logical, and we should at least listen to you. But we have heard so many versions of truth. Why should we accept your version? Prabhupada, that is like saying, I have come across so many counterfeit coins. Why should I think there are real coins? There are counterfeit coins, and there must also be genuine coins. It is our misfortune if we are unable to distinguish the real coins from the counterfeit coins. Another sannyasi challenged that Krishna consciousness version was dogmatic, since there were many truths and many gods. But the absolute truth is one, Srila Prabhupada replied. Because God is one, God has no competitors. If a person does not accept Krishna as a God, then he has to present someone who is more fully God than Krishna. But if someone does not know who is God, then that person cannot deny Krishna. If you speak that way, Prabhupada continued, then you are being dogmatic. You do not know what God is. Yes, dogmatically, you are saying that Krishna is not God. Prabhupada compared those who deny the supremacy of Krishna to owls who do not open their eyes to see the sunlight. Such persons demand to see God, but when God comes before them personally, or when he sends his pure representative, they will not see. On another morning walk in Denver, Tamal Krishna Goswami told Prabhupada that some of the devotees were reading books about health diets and were avoiding the prasadam offered to deity in temple. Srila Prabhupada immediately replied, this was not good. Fasting, he acknowledged, was good for health. But devotees should not become weak. They should take prasadam and do their work. When one of the devotees told Prabhupada, he got drowsy after eating heavily of grains. Therefore, he preferred fruit. Prabhupada said that was all right. Food was offered to the deity. When Yaduvars said that in Los Angeles, the families often cooked in their homes instead of taking prasadam of deity, Bhavananda Goswami testified how wonderful it was at the Mayapur festival, and hundreds of devotees sat down and took prasadam together. Prabhupada said, yes. What is the difficulty? Chapati, rice, they are innocent foods. What is the difficulty? Harikesh Maharaj. A lot of devotees are quoting you. They say there is no need to eat grains, and that you said that grains were for the animals. Prabhupada, but I'm eating grains. Harikesh, I tell them that. Prabhupada, if Prabhupada says, then you believe it. Prabhupada said, the devotees should not listen to health advice if it is resulted in their refusing to honor the Lord's prasadam. Prabhupada, the follow taking prasadam. Let whatever may happen, let us die eating prasadam. Yes, that is devotee. But we prepare very first-class foodstuffs. And then where is the complaint if it is first class? Returning from the walk, Srila Prabhupada continued to discuss the topics of Srimad Bhagavatam class. I was hearing that we are not taking prasadam, especially the Bhagavatas. No, that is not good. You should take prasadam. Prabhupada described how bhakti yoga begins with controlling the tongue, by chanting and by eating Krishna prasadam. So in our branches, he continued, all the devotees take prasadam together. That is nice. Why we should not be liking to take prasadam at the temple? What is the fault? No, this is not good. Everyone should take prasadam. It is called prasada seva, not prasadam enjoyment. Prasadam means giving service. Prasadam is as good as Krishna and should be respected as good as Krishna. So one must have faith that it is not material. Those who are attached to the Krishna consciousness movement and are attached to the service, they should take prasadam. First class prasadam. Everyone likes the taste of prasadam. July 2, 1975. On the plane from Denver to Chicago, Prabhupada scanned a Time magazine essay on crime, a cover story entitled Crime, Why and What to Do. Landing at O'Hare Airport, he was greeted by hundreds of cheering devotees and the press. Your Divine Grace, Sri Govinda, the Chicago Temple president, said, pushing forward, this is Miss Jones from NBC television. How do you do? Smiled Miss Jones, and several other reporters held microphones before Prabhupada. I would like to know what the occasion is. Why are you visiting Chicago? Just now I have seen one article in Time magazine. Srila Prabhupada replied. He raised his right hand in an instructive gesture and leaned against the cane he held in his left hand. It was 4 or 5 pages. He continued, crying, why and how to solve it. If you are serious, then you can take our method and suggestion. Then you can stop this crying. You have a way to stop the crying? Oh, yes, I have. Can you explain a little bit more how you do it? Srila Prabhupada nodded. That we have to suggest. The social, political, educational, cultural, everything has to be changed. So if you come, we can give you in details how it can be done. Miss Jones dropped the issue and asked Prabhupada how he felt about his welcome. See, she seemed unrevered by the devotees, crowding around to see and hear Srila Prabhupada. By God's grace, Srila Prabhupada said, wherever I go, the welcome be like that. Miss Jones, are you used to anything a bit more serene? Serene? Prabhupada thoughtfully considered the word as they all stood together in the midst of noisy, heavily trafficked airport. Of course, our whole propaganda is serene, he said. Yes, we are distributing God consciousness. It is the most serene moment. People have to learn to recognize. Thank you, said Miss Jones. She had gotten enough. But Prabhupada added last word. My message is to stop the crimes of your country. This is my sum in substance. You have read that article in Times magazine, Crime and How to Stop It. So if you take my advice, you can be stopped. The world is simply full of criminals. Prabhupada continued, seated in the back seat of the car as they pulled away from the airport's entrance. Crime means papi, sinful. To Srila Prabhupada, it seemed to make no difference that he was sitting in the car with few disciples and not speaking with press. If simply by law you want to suppress them, it will not be successful. Deliver them, then you also come along with them. Not that this criminals only should be delivered. And you will go on continuing with criminal activities, slaughterhouses, and killing the child. You are criminal yourself, the whole state. Srila Prabhupada sat waiting for his massage to begin. His regular daily schedule was to take massage at 11:30 a.m. before bathing and taking prasadam. But today, because of his plane travel, his routine was interrupted. Nevertheless, he wanted to follow his general program as far as possible. Upendra was getting mustard oil in the mat for Srila Prabhupada to sit on. So we can solve this, Prabhupada said to a few disciples with him. Why not invite them to hear us? How we can solve? We can arrange big meetings on this point. Crime. Why? What to do? A very suitable headline it is. Prabhupada continued to develop a Krishna conscious analysis of crime. As long as society violates the laws of nature, he said, there must be crime. He thought it's significant that, according to the Time article, the leaders of the country were actually wondering what to do about the increasing crime rate, and that they were admitting that they didn't know the solution. Now he said, our business is to give the solution to this leader if they actually want the welfare of the country. All the problems could be solved by Krishna consciousness. Srila Prabhupada often said, now he was eager to tackle the particular problem of crime. America's leaders were admitting their bewilderment, and if they were actually sincere, then they might accept the Krishna conscious solution. Prabhupada was keen to preach to the government leaders. Krishna consciousness was meant especially for them. Bhagavad Gita stated that the Raja Rishis or saintly kings should discriminate the teachings of Gita to the citizens. Sorry. Bhagavad Gita stated that Raja Rishis or saintly kings should disseminate the teachings of Gita to the citizens. But were the leaders actually serious? Srila Prabhupada wondered. He was serious and he anticipated the special opportunity that might arise here in Chicago to preach to the leaders about ending crime. While sitting with a group of disciples in his room, Srila Prabhupada asked for a particular Bhagavatam verse to be read and give the opening Sanskrit. Kamashina indriyapati labho jivate yavata jivasatatva jignashana arthajacha iha karmabi. Harikesh read, a completely bewildered material civilization is wrongly directed toward the fulfillment of desires in sense gratification. In such civilization, in all spheres of life, the ultimate end is sense gratification. In politics, social service, altruism, philanthropy, ultimately in religion, or even in salvation, the very same tint of sense gratification is ever increasingly predominant. In the political field, leaders of men fight with one another to fulfill their personal sense gratification. Srila Prabhupada interrupted. Now in India, this is happening. All these things are foreseen. I have already discussed all this in the purport. Then Harikesh continued. The voters adore the so-called leaders only when they promise sense gratification. As soon as the voters are dissatisfied in their own sense satisfaction, they dethrone the leaders. The leader must always dissatisfy the voters by not satisfying their senses. Again, Prabhupada interrupted. There are protest meetings and processions, but nobody will be able to satisfy them because they do not know how to keep the mass of people satisfied. These rascals, they do not know. I have always said they are rascals. Now they ask what to do. They will face so many problems. What to do? This is a beginning. The whole world will be in chaos if they do not take the Krishna consciousness. So many what to do will come. Just tell them that here is a remedy. Now it is the time of preaching. They're thinking, they're sleeping. But now they're thinking what to do. They're blindly following sense gratification. Now it has come to the stage of what to do. This is the opportunity for preaching. We are the only persons who can give solution. There is no other group of any man in the world. We are only to let them take advantage of our knowledge and apply. Now all the sannyasis have got the good opportunity to preach. The ISKCON temple was in Chicago suburb of Evanston on July 4th, the day after Prabhupada's arrival. Edgar Venman Jr., the mayor of Evanston, came to visit Prabhupada in his apartment. Immediately, Prabhupada referred to the Times New article on crime. The remedy, he said, is to train first-class men. He told the mayor briefly of the Vedic Society's four nature divisions, pointing out the society had become so degraded that everyone is in the fourth class, the lowest class, thinking the only hope was to train some first class and second class men. We certainly need a new approach, admitted Mayor Van Man, because we are not being successful now. After less than half an hour of conversation, Srila Prabhupada was ready to make a bold request. Previously, Jagdish, the GBC secretary for Chicago, had mentioned that a very large municipally owned building across the street was vacant. Srila Prabhupada decided to ask the mayor to donate it. Already he had explained to the mayor that Krishna consciousness would stop crime and drug addiction, and he now asked Harikesh to read a letter by Dr. Stilshan Judah, author of Hare Krishna and Counterculture. In the letter, Dr. Judah appreciated Krishna consciousness for transforming the lives from drug-addicted hippies to loving servant of Krishna and humanity. So we can stop this, provided we are given the facility to work on, said Prabhupada. When the mayor replied, yes, Srila Prabhupada made this request. So I was thinking, Prabhupada said, just in front of here, there is a very nice house, Marywood, a big house. You have knowledge about this house. The mayor replied that this building was to be the new city hall of Munster. Srila Prabhupada had not been told about this, and he hesitated while the mayor spoke of how the city offices scattered for so long in 9 different locations would now all be together in this one building. But this is more important, Prabhupada said. City service is going on, but criminals are increasing. So why not give us a little opportunity? Mayor Venman explained politely that he would have to talk with the city manager, tactful excusing himself from commitment. If we get a good place, Prabhupada continued, with the cooperation of the authorities and our simple program is, as Professor Judea had remarked, to turn drug-addicted hippies into devotees. We shall invite everyone to come and chant Hare Krishna mantra and give prasadam. I began this movement in New York alone, and this voice gradually came to me. But my process was this, chanting and giving them prasadam. Everyone will be glad to accept it. They will read these books. These devotees here are practical examples. I am a poor Indian. I do not bribe them. Neither I have money. Prabhupada laughed. So now they have dedicated their life for this purpose. So I want to do it on a large scale. But there were practical alternatives. So perhaps Prabhupada suggested the Krishna consciousness movement could use part of the building for a year. He continued describing the efficacy of Krishna consciousness, but the mayor had little else to say. Prabhupada had prasadam brought him and asked his guest if he had any other further inquiry. No, I really don't think. Mayor Venman replied, but I think I would like to learn more about your movement, and I enjoyed talking and listening to you, and I appreciate it. After the mayor left, one of the Prabhupada disciples questioned why they would want such a big building. Chicago temple was large and not at all crowded. My idea is, Prabhupada said, I want to draw the attention of the authorities. If they cooperate, then we can push for more vigorously. But with our present location here, we cannot. A devotee asked. We are doing it on a small scale, Prabhupada explained. It is going on. But if we get support from the authorities, we can push it on a large scale. Lieutenant David Mosey, public relations representative of Chicago Police Department, was interested in Srila Prabhupada's idea for stopping crime, and Srila Prabhupada offered a simple proposal. The government should give ISKCON a large building where the devotee could regularly hold mass kirtans, distribute prasada. Gradually, people would become purified. Lieutenant Mosey, like Mayor Venman, was respectful and interested. Unless you clean the heart, Srila Prabhupada said, you cannot stop criminality simply by laws. The laws are already known by thief and the murderer, but still they commit because the heart is unclean, and our process is to cleanse the heart. A very difficult task, sir, said Lieutenant Mosey. Prabhupada replied, it wasn't difficult. He was already doing it on the small scale. They are faced with the problem, why crime, what to do, he said, and we are giving the answer, so you take advantage of it. Why crime? You're saying because they have confidence. And what to do? Chant Hare Krishna, take prasadam. If you like, you can take. Otherwise, we are doing our own business. Just like a poor medical man, he is also giving medicine. But if he is given facility, he can, he can open a big hospital. That is our proposition. We are already doing that business. But if we get facility from the authorities, then we can open a big place, big hospital, and the problem is already big. Otherwise, why are they saying what to do? Illinois State Assemblyman John Porter, who came with his wife, also asked about the solution to crime, but he had a more direct personal interest in spiritual life. Was it possible, he asked, to make a spiritual advancement without living in temple? Srila Prabhupada told him yes. If he chanted Hare Krishna, which he could do anywhere, and he should read the standard books of Krishna consciousness movement. Mr. Porter also inquired about Krishna conscious understanding of certain Christian theological points, such as original sin and salvation. Srila Prabhupada, however, did not indulge in discussing theoretical or comparative religion, but emphasized the necessity of strictly following the instruction given by God or his representative. The main business, Prabhupada said, is to understand God. Mr. Porter seemed unlikely to help the devotees get a large building, but he had inquired only of spiritual life. Prabhupada's unstinting deliverance of Krishna consciousness was not conditional. If anyone sincerely inquired, be he an assemblyman or a criminal, Srila Prabhupada was always eager to give him the mercy of Lord Chaitanya. Srila Prabhupada's Chicago visit included several important functions at the temple. Tamal Krishna Goswami and Vishnu Swami had come to Chicago to see Srila Prabhupada and to recommend for initiation 75 new men who had joined their Radha Damodar traveling Sankirtan party. And at the end of the week, Prabhupada will be attending Rath Yatra procession in downtown Chicago. Each morning, he lectured in the large hall at the Evanston Temple before several hundred devotees, speaking about the life of Ajamil. Each day, he would tell more of the history of the sinner Ajamil, who was saved at the time of death by calling out the name of God Narayan. On the fourth morning, Prabhupada was explaining how Ajamil had named one of his sons Narayana. So the idea is that by God's grace, in the beginning of his life, Ajamil engaged himself to be Krishna conscious and was initiated. Then years later, Krishna gave him the advice, right? You keep this youngest son named Narayan, because you'll be naturally attached to his body and you'll call him Narayan, Narayan, please come here. Narayan, take your food. Narayan, take your drink. So you will chant Narayan. Srila Prabhupada suddenly becomes stunned, unable to speak. Such a thing had happened before, but rarely. He remained in trance while a pregnant silence held the room. The devotee could see that Prabhupada was experiencing a powerful spiritual emotion. Srila Prabhupada suddenly became stunned, unable to speak. The thing had happened before, but rarely. He remained in trance while a pregnant silence held the room. Devotees could see that Prabhupada was experiencing powerful spiritual emotion. Many of them felt that when he called out Narayan, he had come face to face with Narayan. He was seeing Krishna, was showing how very pleased he was with this pure devotee. Surely Krishna was very pleased with Prabhupada. Although Prabhupada was fully engaged with the details of his movements within the material world, Krishna was with him, giving him assurance for the spiritual world. For the devotees, this movement confirmed the existence of the spiritual world and confirmed that Prabhupada belonged to the world and was only visiting the material world to give Krishna consciousness. Most of the devotees were neophytes, still attached to the material and having little vision to the spiritual. But now they could see the spiritual world through the Srila Prabhupada ecstatic trance. After about a minute, Srila Prabhupada returned to external consciousness. All right, he said. And then with the same words, he used to end all his lectures. He said, thank you very much. Then devotees began arousing melodic kirtan. It had been a special moment, and they kept it in their hearts. Srila Prabhupada held a press conference at Sheraton, Chicago, and the turnout by TV and the press was good. Sitting on a cushioned platform, surrounded by his sannyasis, Prabhupada lectured a group of media people who sat patiently. He introduced his topic as talking about the spiritual existence of the living being and described the unavoidable miseries of the material world and how to transcend them by learning to love God and thus return to eternal spiritual world. Those persons endeavoring to attain this spiritual goal are first-class men, he said, and he described the four natural social divisions. On concluding, he called for questions. A reporter challenged that the four divisions of society were contrary to everything in American tradition. But Srila Prabhupada replied that only training was required. America was training doctors, engineers, lawyers, and America could train some first-class men. Woman reporter, where do women fit into the social structures? You keep referring to a man. Prabhupada replied that a woman was a man's assistant. If a woman was faithful to a first-class man, then she also became first class. If she was married to a second-class man, Kshatriya, then she will be considered second class. If she was married to third-class man, Vaishya, then she was called third class. According to the status of her husband, she became first, second, third, or fourth. Woman reporter, you mean she's not qualified as first, second, or third class until she's married? Prabhupada, yes. A woman requires protection. In childhood, she should be protected by father. In youth, by the husband. Old age, by the elderly sons. Same reporter asked if Prabhupada thought Indira Gandhi was having political trouble because she was a woman and therefore incapable. She was a woman and therefore incapable. Why are you trying to put me in the emergency law? Prabhupada laughed. He then quoted Chanakya Pandit. Never trust a woman or a politician. Prabhupada created a sensation, and within a few hours, Chicago radio and TV station were talking of the news conferences, concentrating almost entirely on his comments about women. A women elder man visit secluded. What do you mean by women elder man? Let's see. A women elder man scheduled to visit Prabhupada phoned to say that she was cancelling because of Srila Prabhupada's expressed attitude towards women. A TV station phoned and requested to come over that evening to do an interview. While the Chicago's news report says Srila Prabhupada had wanted to reach the public with his Krishna conscious message. And therefore, he had arrived in Chicago with a specific idea of broadcasting his solution to crime. But now he had hit on the topic that was attracting far more attention. He had that boldness to assert in the midst of America's predominant mood of women's liberation, women's real place in society. The devotees were excited by the controversy and were eager to understand the Krishna conscious philosophy more deeply and to present it exactly. They complained that none of the reporters had delved deeply or allowed Prabhupada to express his ideas of spiritual equality. Yet when Prabhupada heard that evening that he had touched off of so much media response, he was amused. He was ready to tell them more. Why only the woman should be pregnant, he said. He said, reiterating his point before the small group of devotees in his room. The man goes away and she has to take care of the children and beg from government. Is that the independence? Devotee. Then the independence has become contraction. They say, I don't want to have a child. Prabhupada, it means you commit another sinful activity. You're punished. Devotee. Srila Prabhupada, the whole civilization, American Western civilization, is now bewildered by this theory of women's liberation. Prabhupada, how they will be liberated. On this point, first of all, let me know. Anyway, I'm not speaking of experience. When we speak from the Shastras. Women's dependence is described in Manu Samhita. Just like Queen Kunti, she is not an ordinary woman. She was learned and exalted. Brahmananda Swami, this is one point. In our devotional line, there are spiritual leaders who have been women, such as Kunti. Prabhupada, therefore I say that Kunti remained dependent on her sons. That is my proposition. Her sons were banished. When they sent to forest, she followed because she thought, I am widow, I am dependent on my sons. So wherever they remain, I shall remain. Similarly, Sita, the wife of Lord Ramchandra. Lord Ramchandra was requested by his father to go to the forest for Sita, but she preferred to go with her husband. The husband said, you are not banished, you stay at home. She said, no, I am dependent on you. Wherever you shall go, I must go. This is Vedic culture. Devotee. Her chastity was a great virtue. But nowadays, that is no longer true. Prabhupada. Nowadays may be different, but I'm speaking the Vedic idea. That's all. In all circumstances, unless her husband is crazy or something like that mad, in every case, the wife is faithful and subservient to the husband. Even the husband goes out of the home, vanprastha. The wife also goes with him. When he takes sannyas, at that time, there is no accompanying of wife. Otherwise, in Grasta life, in Vipapasa life, the wife is a constant companion and subservient. Gandhari, her husband was blind. So when the marriage ceremony was done, she was not blind, but she voluntarily became blind by wrapping the cloth over her eyes. There were instances in the Vedic literature, the wife remains always faithful and subservient to the husband. That is her profession. The Americans may not like this idea, but that is a different thing. A 5-person TV crew arrived at Prabhupada's apartment, 4 women and a male assistant. Obviously, they were making a point. While the crew set up the lights and equipment, Prabhupada sat serenely behind his low desk, few of his disciples sitting before him on the floor. The interviewer first asked Prabhupada about his solution to America's problems. Comparing society to the human body, Prabhupada replied, and while all the parts of body were important, the head was very important. In fact, the head was the most important. Without properly functioning head, the person was mad. There was a need, therefore, for training first-class men. Where do women fit into these 4 classes? The newswoman asked. Srila Prabhupada duly repeated that a woman being subordinate to men had her position according to the position of her husband. And so it went. The questions were challenged. Do you think I'm inferior to you? The interviewer was out to make Prabhupada appear prejudiced, but he spoke only pure philosophy. Spiritually, they are all one, Prabhupada said. Yet, he emphasized a distinction materially between men and women. For example, he said, women can bear children, but the man cannot. Is it possible for the man to become pregnant? Interviewer, what happens when women are not subordinate to men? Prabhupada, then there is a disruption, social disruption. Therefore, in the Western countries, there are so many divorce cases because the woman does not agree to become subordinate to men. Interviewer, what advice do you have to women? What do you want to become subordinate? Who do you want to become? What advice do you have to women? Who do not want to become subordinate to men? Okay. Prabhupada, it is not my advice. It is the advice of Vedic knowledge that women should be chaste and faithful to men. Should Prabhupada return to the point that women bear children, but men cannot. But nature's way, he said, as soon as you get children, you require support from the husband, otherwise you are in difficulty. Many women have children and have no support from their husband. They have no husband. Prabhupada, then they take support from others. You cannot deny that. The government is giving you support, but the government is embarrassed. If the husband supports the wife and children, the government is relieved of so much welfare contribution, so that is a problem. Men and women unite. The woman becomes pregnant, husband goes away, the poor woman is embarrassed with the child, she has to beg from the government. So do you think it is a very nice thing? The Vedic idea is that woman should be married to a man and the man should take charge of the women and the children so that they do not become burden to the government or to the public. Interviewer, what about women who do not have children? Prabhupada, well, that is another natural thing. Sometimes they use contraceptives. They kill children, abortion. So this is not very good. These are all sinful activities. One has to suffer for them. It was heated interview. The feminist interviewer sat on discharging Prabhupada for his outrageous remarks. yet he remained strong and uncompromising, arguing in such a way as to point out many anomalies of materialistic civilization. Prabhupada didn't discriminate against women as a class and in fact gave women in his Krishna conscious movement, the same opportunity as men. Prabhupada didn't discriminate against women class and in fact gave women in his Krishna conscious movement the same opportunity as men, although a reporter misunderstood him, labeling him as a male chauvinist. Chauvinist? Actually, he was compassionate. According to the Vedic view, women should be protected from exploitative men. Prabhupada was aware that his words were not being appreciated, but he continued, hopeful that the truth would prevail and that intelligent people would understand the important point was liberation, not temporary social or sexist stances. Okay, Mataji, thank you. Thank you. Where is Lamanta Mataji? Yeah. कोई तो है नहीं, एक तो है, मैं की कोई नहीं है, कोई नहीं है. अच्छा, लाइव मैं फोन पे था.